Und weil der Mensch ein Mensch ist, drum braucht er was zum Essen, bitte sehr. Es macht ihn ein Geschwätz nicht satt, das schafft kein Essen her.
Drum links, zwei, drei, drum links, zwei, drei, wo dein Platz genossen ist. Weil ich ein Kind, ja, weil der Einheitsgrund, weil du auch ein Arbeiter bist.
Und weil der Mensch ein Mensch ist, drum hat der Stiefel im Gesicht nicht gern. Er will unter sich keinen Sklaven sehen und über sich keinen Herrn.
Drum links, zwei, drei, drum links, zwei, drei, wo dein Platz genossen ist. Weil ich ein Idealweiter Einheitsgrund, weil du auch ein Arbeiter bist.
Und weil der Prolet ein Prolet ist, drum wird ihn kein anderer befreien. Es kann die Befreiung der Arbeiter nur das Werk der Arbeiter sein.
Drum links, zwei, drei, drum links, zwei, drei, und ein Platz genossen ist. Weil ich ein Idealweiter Einheitsgrund, weil du auch ein Arbeiter bist.
Здравствуйте, comrades. Oh no, that's not the right background. We do red glitter background on Socialism Saturdays. Guys, welcome to Socialism Saturday, the most dystopian stream that you will watch all week long on the internet. On Socialism Saturday, I should get on Twitch. Oh, no. I'm far too old for that, but I do appreciate it. On Socialism Saturday, we do not watch. This is our advanced AP class into all things leftist. We don't watch no AOC socialists on Socialism Saturday. We don't watch no Bernie Sanders socialists, no CNN socialists, nothing like that. What we do on Socialism Saturday is we watch the furthest left of the far left, the most dystopian of the dystopian, and we talk about it. And we learn what the enemy is thinking, because guys, if you don't listen to what the enemy is saying, you will never be able to defeat them. And there's a lot of, listen, there may have been a time when the political right understood the left better than the left understood the right, but that time has long since passed. Trust me, it's not there anymore. And so on Socialism Saturday, what we do is we actually watch the socialist, we listen to the socialist, we try to understand what the socialist believes and what they actually think, and we use that information to predict what's coming. And I really think that the people who watch not only Socialism Saturday on Saturdays, but also Happy Hour on Fridays at 5 p.m. know more about what the woke left is doing and what the woke left is planning and what the woke left is going to doom our society with at any given moment. You guys understand it more than anyone else on the internet. It is a scary but true fact. Except for possibly the audience of the person that we're going to watch today. Because I would argue that, well, we understand the left more than the vast majority of people, more than the pundits, more than the commentators, more than all the so-called experts that re on Twitter all day. We are so fucking far ahead of the reply guys on Twitter. It's not even funny. Except for one specific reply guy on Twitter. Well, he's not really a reply guy. He is kind of the hero that started this entire thing. And that will be Mr. James Lindsay himself. Now, if you guys have picked up a copy of my book, Actively Unwoke, the ultimate guide for fighting back against the woke insanity in your life, You know that I revere James Lindsay so much that I dedicated an entire chapter to him in my book. It is the last chapter of the book, and it is called Fight Like James Lindsay, because there is no one out there in the world over the past several years who has fought and worked and done everything he can to try to sound the alarm bell of what's going on, to try to explain to people what's going on, than James Lindsay. He is incomparable. He is the king. Without him, we would all be lost, and I really do mean that. And today, and sadly for me, because I'm doing what I'm doing, I actually don't get to watch that much James Lindsay anymore, simply because I want to be able to look at information and analyze information on my own. I don't want to be assimilating James Lindsay's analysis into mine. Not because I don't think he's great, but just because I think that if two people can kind of come to the same conclusion using different methods and not referencing the other, I think that that actually just makes a stronger case for it. So sadly, I don't actually get to listen to James Lindsay that much anymore, simply because I don't want to be influenced by him. I want to be able to come to conclusions on my own. But today we're going to have a little bit of a treat. Today, we are not only going to listen to the incomparable James Lindsay, a speech that I've wanted to listen to for a while and just hadn't. Today, we are going to listen to the socialists over at Midwestern Marx as they try to debunk James Lindsay. And what they're going to try to debunk is this speech that James Lindsay gave to the EU, I think. I think that's where he was. He was over in Europe giving some sort of speech. I've wanted to watch this speech for a while. And now we not only get to watch at least most of part of the speech, I guess. I don't even know if they watched the whole thing. We are also going to get to watch socialists, real socialists, react to James Lindsay's speech to get their talking points. And I have to do a very, 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 very special shout out to Nick Incognito, who, because this was just streamed a couple hours ago. If I had really been on the ball today, I was doing other work, I wasn't paying attention. But if I had really, yes, shout out to Nick, because Nick is the one who DM'd me earlier today and was like, Carlin, you should probably watch this. And I was like, Nick, we will be watching that in just a few short hours. You sit tight. I wish I had caught it live. I wish we could have stream sniped their asses and done a whole meta stream about it. Sadly, I was doing other things. And you know what? What perfect timing. They stream it but a couple hours ago, and then we get to watch it for Socialism Saturday. So the description only says Carlos. And by the way, I want to say something about Carlos. In our very first interaction with Midwestern Marx, because our very first time watching Midwestern Marx was, what was it, like a couple months ago or something, where we discovered this channel and they happened to be doing some sort of socialist book launch for Carlos's book a couple months ago. And so I just stream sniped their stream and we did Socialism Saturday live reaction to Midwestern Marx, which, by the way, they were not happy about at all. But I actually found Carlos to be interesting, because Carlos, in his book launch, said, you know what we need to do, guys? We need to reach out to the MAGA voter, the normal people, because we need to convince them that socialism is really better for them and that we actually have more in common that we don't. And blah, 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 blah. Carlos did this whole speech, apparently wrote a whole book about why socialists and the worker need to reach out to the worker on the MAGA side. And I was like, you know what, Carlos, you're actually going down the correct path that you should be going down, because he really is. He is actually correct that the populist base on both sides have more in common than they do not in common. And I had been waiting. I was like, at some point, some fucking socialist is going to figure out that if they say the right words to the MAGA people, then they can probably get the MAGA people on their team. And it was funny because Carlos has figured this out. Sadly, Carlos does not have the courage of his conviction. Because after I watched that first Midwestern Marx stream with Carlos talking about how the socialist really needs to reach out to the MAGA voter, I was like, all right, game on, challenge accepted. And I emailed Midwestern Marx and I emailed Carlos and I said, I would like to invite you on my channel to make your case to the MAGA people, because I absolutely have many more MAGA people than you have watching my channel. And so if you want to come on to make your case, I will let you say whatever you want to say. I won't interrupt you. I won't be a bitch. I won't even try to debunk you or anything like that. Like, make your fucking case to the MAGA voter. I will give you a platform to do it. I will give you MAGA voters to talk to. Do you want to come on my channel, Carlos? Carlos never emailed me back. It was very sad. We could have had a great chat. Carlos, the offer is still on the table. If you want to come on my stream, Carlos, I will have you on for a Socialism Saturday. We could do Socialism live. It would be great. We would all love to hear from you, Carlos. I will give you a platform. Look, we've got it decorated. It's all red. We'll create a very welcoming environment for you to make the socialist case for the MAGA voter about why they should support you guys. I'm just saying that if Carlos really had the courage of his convictions that he wrote about in his book, he would. I did invite Sophie Yasmin. I invited Sophie on Twitter. Sophie didn't respond either. Maybe someday I'll get to have a socialist on my channel, a real live socialist. But that's another thing for another day. So guys, this is what we're watching tonight. We are watching Midwestern Marx trying to debunk lying James Lindsay, as they put it. And they didn't really say much more than that. They said Carlos, Eddie, Noah explain how, contrary to the Olympian effort of lying James Lindsay to twist basic facts into complicated pretzels, modern bourgeois ideology is not, in fact, Marxism, shocking no one. Well, we have about a 2-hour-long stream to listen to Carlos and Eddie and Noah try to explain to us why James Lindsay is wrong. I think this is going to be a great stream, guys. I want to encourage everyone to go get your favorite beverage of choice and a snack, and we're all going to enjoy this together. But that's not all, because usually on Sundays, I don't stream on Sundays. I like to have a day off every now and again where I don't have to put on makeup and be on the internet. But tomorrow, there is something very, very, very special happening. Tomorrow is not just movie night in my supporter Discord, which we'll talk about in a second, which we usually do on Sundays. We do Sundays every week, 8 p.m. movie night in my Discord. We're watching MASH this week. It was a vote. I've never seen it. I don't know. But there's something else going on tomorrow at 2 p.m. Well, I'm going to start at about 1:45 p.m. Eastern time because our favorite socialist book publisher, Haymarket Books, the founders and proprietors of the conference that is quite literally called Socialism, the YouTube channel that started Socialism Saturday, when last year they streamed their Socialism conference on a Saturday on YouTube. And I said, well, why don't we watch this? And we've been following Haymarket Books ever since. And tomorrow at 2 p.m. Eastern Time, Haymarket Books is doing a live stream with our favorite transgender Marxist authors and editors, and it's going to be great. You know that transgender Marxism, queer Marxism, is one of our favorite topics to dissect on Socialism Saturday. If you were not around for the queer Marxism marathon that we did a couple weeks ago, you've got to go back and watch the queer Marxism marathon. It was one of the most insane nights in the history of Socialism Saturday. And Jules, was on the Queer Marxism Marathon. And Jules is one of the editors, I guess, of the book that me and Beth and Brooklyn are slowly but surely making our way through this book. I have actually started reading it. It's just really ridiculous. And Jules is one of the editors of the book, literally called Transgender Marxism. Yasmin is also reading Transgender Marxism. We basically have an unofficial Transgender Marxism book club going in my community right now. And tomorrow at 2 p.m., Haymarket Books is streaming Transgender Marxism Against the Backlash. Join trans theorists and activists for a discussion of how transgender Marxism can explain the backlash and help guide the resistance. And you know what? You can't tempt me with something like this and then expect me not to stream it. You just can't do it. We now had a little bit of a break from Red May. I think some of us needed a little bit of a break for those who weren't around for Red May. Red May was a month where we watched more socialism on this channel than any human being should be able to consume. But tomorrow we're doing it. 2 p.m. I'm probably going to start the stream at 1:45 p.m. for a Sunday special, Socialism Live, Transgender Marxism Against the Backlash. Thank you, Haymarket Books. We greatly appreciate it. But guys, before we do our James Lindsay versus Midwestern Marx showdown for tonight, I have a couple things to remind you of. Number one, please do make sure you are subscribed to my Substack, Carlyn, KARLYN.substack.com. I haven't been posting this week because I was really not feeling great at all this week. I apologize. You can't fight against the force of God. When God decides that God wants you laying in bed for 2 days. I saw Reagan comment in the chat that I look much better today than I did yesterday. Yeah, I feel much better today than I did yesterday. I'll tell you that right now. But normally when I am not having my head in the toilet for 3 days, normally, this is where I post my very best Unwoke content. I do hope to have some stuff that I promised you guys earlier this week out later on tonight after Socialism Saturday about the American Library Association woman and all that good stuff. But definitely make sure you are subscribed. You can always subscribe for free at Carlyn, KARLYN.substack.com. But if you do want to support the work I'm doing and keep me in business, please make sure you sign up as a member for $5 a month, $50 a year. And that'll keep me in business. And by the way, guys, my prices on the Substack are going up at the end of the month, because I right now am not in line with where creators with my list level are. And so I am rectifying that situation. I'm sorry. That's the way the world works, man. But they will be going up to $8 a month and $8 a month or $80 for the year at the end of the month. But if you sign up as a paying supporter before that, you will be grandfathered in and you will still get it at $5 a month, $50 a year. So now's a great time to sign up. And I really do appreciate it. Got lots of great stuff over on the Substack if you have not checked that out. And I also encourage you guys to check out my Unwoke art store, the home of, we got some cool stuff. Listen, this is like an unofficial launch. I haven't really officially launched it yet, but you can currently get the All Tears Are Tasty t-shirt. And actually, let me show you the tumbler, because Daily Wire ain't got nothing on me. I now have the special All Tears Are Tasty tumbler in the Unwoke art store. It looks fucking awesome. I'm so excited about this. You can also get it in mugs. You can get it in t-shirts. You can get all sorts of cool stuff in the Unwoke art store if you haven't checked it out yet. And it is also, of course, the home to the official Socialism Saturday merch. I should probably make that its own category at some point. Let me just find it, though, so you can actually see it. So we've got the Join the Cult t-shirt for the official Socialism Saturday merch. If you want to get a t-shirt and support your fearless leader, that would be great. And then, of course, we also have the Be Bourgeois t-shirt, because, of course, the socialists do not want us to be bourgeois, but they can eat a dick, and we'll be bourgeois if we want to. And that's all available in the Unwoke Art store, which is unwokeart.com. And if you haven't checked it out, I definitely encourage you to. I'm going to be doing some more product launches in the next couple of weeks or so, but all sorts of great stuff in there right now. And I'm sorry, I love this design. I love it so much. It's so great. Anyway, that's the Unwoke Art store, guys. And then, of course, we do have Socialism Bingo on Socialism Saturday. So let me pop this in the chat right now. There you go. And I'll pop it in the chat over on Rumble too. Hello to everyone watching me on Rumble and on Odyssey and on Rockfin and on Twitter and Gitter and Facebook and all the other places that I'm streaming right now. If you want your Socialism Bingo card, hit up the chat on either Rumble or YouTube, and that's where you'll find the link to it. Go ahead, click Generate Card. You get a free square in the middle, and then we're going for lines or we're going for corners. Now, if you're very lucky, you're going to have solidarity twice. There we go. Solidarity twice, our own little version of equity, just because I can't fix the damn bingo card because I got other things to do. Anyway, you can play along with Socialism Bingo if you want to, as we're enjoying our presentation today. No, not on Twitch. I can't. I thought about going on Twitch. I did. I think I even have an account. I just don't understand Twitch. I don't understand it. I'm too old. I don't know. Maybe someone can explain to me and make the case for why I should be on Twitch, but I feel like I'm too old to be on Twitch. I feel like I just like I don't know, man. Maybe someday someone can explain it to me. If someone can make a good case, I will strongly consider it. All right, guys. Here's what I need everyone to do before we get started. There is a shocking disparity between the number of people watching right now and the number of people who have mounted that like button for me. So I need everyone on YouTube to mount the like button for me, because mounting the like button lets YouTube promote the stream to other people, to tell them to come join us in our stream today to watch Socialism. So let's mount that like button. And while you guys are mounting that like button, I'm going to get myself a beer. Hang on. I'm going to opt for the moment for a nice cherry saison from Outhouse Ales. This is a craft brewery out of Norwood, New Hampshire. So nice little cherry saison. Hopefully it's a little bit red for Socialism Saturday, keeping in our theme. If you are drinking anything fun tonight, let us know what you're drinking in the chat. Nope, not red. That's okay. It's still a saison though. So saisons are like Belgians. They have very complex flavor. And I'm looking forward to just like a hint of cherry. Oh, I definitely smell the cherry, that's for sure. Cheers, guys. Happy Socialism Saturday. All right. We could have a couple more likes. Come on, keep mounting that like button for me. I'm going to set up the sound in the meantime. All right, guys, we are watching Midwestern Marx attempt to debunk the lying James Lindsay tonight. And as always, so Midwestern Marx is if you're new to Socialism Saturday, I want to prepare you. Sometimes socialists speak in code, and so it might be difficult for you to understand them. If it might sound like they're speaking English, but they're really not. They're speaking socialist. And so if you don't understand what the socialists are saying, let us know in the chat. It's not you, it's them. We have learned to speak socialism over the course of watching socialists all the time for like almost a full year now. And so we can help translate, we can help explain what they mean. Autumn Leaves in the chat is also a socialist who helps us understand what the socialist means. Don't trust a fucking thing Autumn says unless one of us confirms it. Because although Autumn plays nicely in our chat, she is still a socialist, which means she's a liar. Okay. But generally speaking, Autumn is pleasant and funny sometimes and like helps us to understand her kind. And so we let her stay. And there are other socialists milling about as well. But just keep in mind that socialists always lie. That includes Autumn, who we have caught in several lies since this little relationship began. Autumn has also not yet gotten me on Sam Cedar's show, Autumn. Anyway, we will do our best to interpret what the socialist means. If you have questions, ask them in the chat. Just don't be put off if you can't understand them. Although I will say this, Midwestern Marx does tend to be a little bit more understandable than the average socialist. So it might be okay. And this is a learning community, guys. I have 2 rules in my chat. Number 1, don't be a dick. I'm allowed to be a dick. No one else is allowed to be a dick. Basically what don't be a dick means, you will not insult me. You will not insult other people in the chat. If you do, I'm going to block your ass because I don't want shit posting here. Number 2, no whining. If I tell you to stop doing something, just stop doing it. This is not an unmoderated chat. We are here primarily to learn and to expand our ideas about what's going on in the world. And so I don't like shit posting posting or anything of that. Not to say you can't have fun. You can. Just don't be a dick. No whining. That's it. That's all I'm asking. All right, guys. No besmirching. Exactly, Beth. No besmirching in my chat. Thou shall not be a dick. Exactly. See, this is why I have the best community on all of YouTube. I swear. All right, guys, let's get this party started.
By the Midwestern Marx Institute for Marxist Theory and Political Analysis. Real quick before we get started, I want to mention that everybody knows we get throttled and shadow banned and all that. So for real, please click like, subscribe, the little bell thing, whatever. I know I hate asking to do it, but it does help us. Give the link to your buddies, all that kind of stuff. Maybe we can shoot up.
Hang on, I just want to make a note of something. Johnny Bravo is also a socialist. Actually, Johnny might even consider himself to be a communist. So just beware. Just be aware. I do get socialists and communists milling about. And by the way, guys, socialists and communists are welcome to watch Socialism Saturday. And if there are socialists, as long as they behave themselves and they follow the rules and they don't disrupt shit, like I actually find it helpful when the socialist will come in and tell us about what they think. So they're allowed to be here. We're not going to kick them out or anything. If you're a lurking socialist of some sort, you are allowed to show yourself. Just follow the rules. That's all I'm asking.
And try to overcome that algorithmic suppression we suffer from. Today, I'm here with my brothers and comrades, Eddie Lager and Carlos Garrido, and we are going to discuss Lion James Lindsay, who, and we're going to sort of dissect a video of his where he's explaining how actually modern bourgeois ideology is really Marxism. So that should be fun. And along with that, I lost my train of thought. I apologize. Before we get started, though, I do want to mention thank you, Ross, for the super sticker right off the bat. You do not know how much that stuff helps. We have no funding, so everything we get to build this institute up and become the People's Institute comes from all of y'all. And with that, let's get started right after this.
Lion James Lindsay. They think they're comfortable.
Injustice and economic injustice cannot be solved without a radical redistribution of political and economic power.
I'll look into that, Rottweiler. Thank you for the tip.
All right. Cobra Commander, thank you for saying I look like
Cobra
a superhero
Commander.
in disguise with the glasses.
Cobra Commander.
I take them off, I become communist man. Now I'm just Eddie for today, though.
You're my hero anyway, brother. So, how is everybody doing? How is your weekend going?
Good. I've just been hanging out with my roommates. Watched Harry Potter yesterday, the first one. They're in the basement watching the second one right now. I know that makes you a liberal, to read Harry Potter rather than read theory, but it's good to relax sometimes. So that was good. I'm excited to break down this James Lindsay guy. I've never heard of him. But it seems like the perfect video for the three of us to.
Laura, I'll get you that bingo card. Hang on a second. He's never heard of James Lindsay. What the fuck? There's your bingo card link, Laura. He's never heard of James Lindsay. Bullshit. Bullshit. Lie number one detected, Eddie. Beth Queen in the chat. Thank you for the super chat. Just because I'm the queen and you're our fearless leader. Well, I do appreciate that, Beth. Thank you so much. My super chats are already bigger than yours, Miss Midwestern Marx, but that's what comes of being a capitalist. Maybe if you guys embraced capitalism, you would get an audience that embraces capitalism and you would get more super chats. Wouldn't that be nice?
Breakdown, so I'm pumped.
One of the arguments that they used to have around the time the Third International, the Comintern was getting started, was how they went about sort of explaining the falsity, lies, etc., of bourgeois ideologies. And Bukharin was often criticized for going after the low-hanging fruit, the easy ones, right? Ben Shapiro's easy. Bosch is easy, right?
They don't think Bosch is a socialist.
From what I'm given to understand, this guy...
Wait. Can we all just have a moment of appreciation for the fact that Midwestern Marx, we agree on something. Bosch is not a socialist. Autumn, do you guys consider Bosch to be a socialist? Because I don't think anyone really considers Bosch to be a socialist. Except for possibly Bosch.
And James Lindsay is whom they consider the top, the cream of the crop.
Yes, he is.
The intellectual
the king,
anti-communist,
the
right?
king himself.
Let's go for the
Yay,
best.
capitalism! Yay, capitalism! Thank you, philosophic. I do appreciate it.
Give us what you got, kind of deal, you know.
Yeah, I've seen some of his clips going around online. It's very similar. It seems to be a more coherent form of the extremely incoherent arguments we debunked when we were covering, I think, Tick History's video on the religion or the cult of dialectics. So I haven't seen the one that we're going to watch today, but I wonder if it's in the same vein. And if so, it's not new. You know, it's just the same old bullcrap sort of repackaged as a hot new intellectual anti-communist commodity. But we must do our task and debunk it either way.
Yeah, I don't expect we'll have much trouble with this.
Carlos reminds me of like an 80s movie villain okay, I'm gonna date myself. Who remembers the Crocodile Dundee movies? Because like I fucking grew up on the Crocodile Dundee movies. It was like a thing, all right. And in the Crocodile Dundee movies, they always had like either these Cuban or like Colombian like socialists as like the enemy. And Carlos totally reminds me of like the villain in the Crocodile Dundee movies. I mean, maybe I'm just making that up, but like that's like he's like an 80s movie villain.
Every single criticism of Marxism I've ever come across kind of goes like this. Step one, make up a bunch of crazy stuff about Marxism. And this begins even with Eugen Doring, right?
We watch your shit, man. We learned from
making
you.
Up a bunch of stuff.
How are we making it up? We learned from you.
To elaborate, you maybe cherry pick a few quotes, throw them out of context, and you start criticizing all these things you made up.
Like from each according to their ability to each according to their need, like that sort of quote, Noah.
Right? And then you say, oh, those things are Marxism. Marxism defeated. What can we do about it? And each time,
then why doesn't Carlos live in Cuba?
Bullcrap, as
you can go back to
Carlos
Cuba.
Just said.
And this is what's so frustrating about the state of the left, you know, and the CIA infiltrated left or synthetic left, whatever you want to call it, is it also allows the right to say this is Marxism and attack it. I've been saying, like, if working class people in this country all knew what communism and Marxism were, I was saying this on a TikTok live yesterday, they'd be, you know, the majority of them would want revolution tomorrow, or they'd be Marxists in a minute.
Then come on my channel and
they're
explain
constantly
it, Noah, or
bombarded with propaganda to just confuse them about what Marxism actually is, you know, and tell them that Marxism is wokeism or whatever. And I think I haven't seen the video yet, but I assume that's what we're going to get here from this fella.
And there's a relationship between these two things, right? The leftists believe it when they're told this, and then the rightists believe the leftists who are telling them, yes, that's correct.
Bro,
But
we
if
listen
you actually
to you.
go to
We've
the
watched
Marx,
your whole
it
Marxism
has
training
nothing
stream.
whatsoever in the world to do with actual Marxism. And I'm sorry I stepped on you.
We
there,
watched
Carlos.
your
It won't happen
Marxism
again.
training stream, bro.
Apology not accepted. Joking.
Damn it.
But yeah, I forgot where I was going with that. So.
For those who don't know, we literally watched Noah give like a 3.5-hour introductory class to Marxism on a Socialism Saturday not that long ago. So don't tell me we're learning from the wrong people, Noah. We're learning from you.
All right, are we ready to jump into the video then?
Let's do it, brother.
Here we go. The best 30-minute explanation of Marxism I have ever heard. More like the worst explanation.
Boo, boo, boo.
Wah, wah. No sound.
We got no sound.
No sound. So they always suck
I
at
muted
technology.
myself for the intro.
They always suck at technology.
Hello, thank you.
There we go.
I'm glad to be here. I want to address something Tom just said, which is, in fact, that woke is supposed to advance equity in Europe. So here's the definition of equity, and see if it sounds like a definition of anything else you've ever heard of. The definition of equity comes from the public administration literature. It was written by a man named George Frederickson. And the definition is an administered political economy in which shares are adjusted so that citizens are made equal. Does that sound like anything you've heard of before?
Keep pausing. Already. First lie, right? Where do you get the idea that socialism is simply redistributing everything so that everyone is made equal?
Because Karl Marx said, from each according to his ability, to each according to their need. This is not fucking theoretical, Noah.
Which socialist country has done this? Which
according to you guys, real socialism has never been tried, so...
Marxist thinker has written this?
Karl Marx himself.
I'd like a little substantiation, but of course that substantiation does not exist because he's making this up.
He literally cited where
Don't you know that in Capital
from.
Volume 1, Marx says socialism is when you take the stock market and divide it by the number of people in the country and then just give shares equally to everyone in the country. And then socialism is achieved. That's actually what China's like. Just kidding, of course.
They're going to administer an economy to make shares equal. The only difference between equity and socialism is the type of property that they redistribute, the type of shares. They're going to redistribute social and cultural capital in addition to economic and material capital. And so this is my thesis when we say, what is woke? Woke is Maoism with American characteristics.
All right, they're probably going to have something to say about that, but I got to take this super chat from Wattweiler. Once again, these guys think they'll be Soviet commissars or high-rank party members or autists, and I hope they enjoy forced menial labor. They're not getting forced menial labor, bro. They're going against the wall. You know that. I know that. They don't know that, but we all know how this ends.
If I might borrow from Mao himself, who said that his philosophy was Marxism, Leninism with Chinese characteristics.
All right, stop again, stop again. Here's another clue that he's either lying by presenting himself as an expert or lying directly. When did Mao say his thought or policies were Marxism, Leninism with Chinese characteristics? When?
That's not
Never
what
happened,
James Lindsay
right?
just said.
Mao Zedong thought develops.
That's not what James Lindsay just said,
Mao
Noah.
is dead, right? And
that's not what he said. He didn't say Mao said that. Hang on.
They're going to redistribute social and cultural capital in addition to economic and material capital. And so this is my thesis when we say, what is woke? Woke is Maoism with American characteristics, if I might borrow from Mao himself, who said that his philosophy was Marxism, Leninism with Chinese characteristics.
All right, stop again. Here's another clue.
I mean, if James Lindsay's saying that came from or Mao at some point, then James Lindsay has basically, like, I don't know if he has an eidetic memory or something, but like, if you've never seen James Lindsay speak in person, he has like full memory recall of like, in this book on page 57, it says X, Y, B, and Z. It's actually freakish to watch him when he's presenting. I'm pretty sure he has an eidetic memory. Because like so if what I'm saying is, if James Lindsay's saying that at some point Mao said that, then I 100% believe him. I wish he had told us where Mao said that to placate the little children here, but I'm sorry, like, James Lindsay knows his shit.
Clue that he's either lying by presenting himself as an expert or lying directly. When did Mao say his thoughts or policies were Marxism, Leninism with Chinese characteristics? When? Never happened, right? Mao Zedong thought develops after Mao is dead, right? And they start trying to do it as he's living. He says, please don't call anything Maoism. But then socialism with Chinese characteristics develops as a description of the society they have post hoc, right? So as things develop, they're describing what is, rather than this is our plan and what we seek to do and implement in the real world. And I also like Marxism, Leninism with Chinese characteristics, which is a phrase that comes out of nowhere that he just made up.
Right. You can make the argument for socialism with Chinese characteristics being in Mao, especially in the epoch of the debates with how it was that the Chinese struggle was sometimes in contradictions with the geopolitical interests of the Soviet Union, and there was these clashes. And it's really there where the idea of socialism with Chinese characteristics sort of emerges from, and you kind of see parts of that implied in the new.
Wait. So Noah just went on this big whole bend about Mao never said socialism with Chinese characteristics, or and now Carlos is like, here's where Mao talks about socialism with Chinese characteristics. So I think that, like, what I will say for Carlos, even though he's a coward and won't come on my channel to speak to the MAGA people he claims to want to convince to be socialist, even though we'd be very nice to him, we'd provide him with a platform, everything would be great. Even though Carlos is a coward, I will say that of the three we have on the stream here, I do actually think that Carlos is the most intelligent about this stuff. I think he's the smartest of all three of them about this stuff. And so, like, I suspect we're going to see a lot tonight of, like, either Noah or Eddie making a claim about something, and then Carlos kind of coming in and being like, here's what's actually going on, and blah, blah, blah. And he's going to try to paint it nicely for them and, like, take their side because they're all in the same team and all that stuff. But I do think that Carlos is actually pretty smart.
Culture movement, which was before the founding of the Communist Party itself, like they're thinking explicitly, well, what is the science that we can use to help China? Which one is best capable of understanding our specific conditions and our specific characteristics? But just to equate this with wokeism is completely deranged, because the sort of the way that the particular is treated in wokeism is completely different from Marxism, Leninism. In Marxism, Leninism, the particular is still a universal particular. There's still an understanding of, let's say, common humanity, or the common characteristic of socialism.
Whoa!
Or Marxism, Leninism as a sort of universally valid.
Yay for capitalism! Thank you for the super chat. Notice how capitalism countries, small businesses and corporations have more capital money to invest in R&D, especially medical industrial complex corporations and weapons industrial complex corporations, versus socialist countries with little to no money. Isn't it funny how capitalism creates more wealth to be able to like reinvest in things, not only in terms of like, the medical industrial complex or like the military or all that stuff, but also in terms of super chats. I really do appreciate the super chat. Yay, capitalism, go team. We are now kicking Midwestern Marx's ass in the super chat department, and I appreciate it, guys. Thank you.
Philosophy that then has to be applied to specific, particular, concrete circumstances in order for the method itself, the universal, to even make sense. With wokeism, what you have is a complete divorce of the particular from the universal, such that the idea of universality itself is completely destroyed in favor of, just sheer tribalism. And we've talked about this a few times, but that woke, those philosophical assumptions, which are rooted in Foucault and Heidegger and other bourgeois and other bourgeois and even Nazi thinkers called Schmidt, it goes back to the reaction to the Enlightenment.
Wait. Did Carlos just accidentally admit that Nazis were socialists? I think Carlos just accidentally admitted that Nazis are socialists.
The Enlightenment is a movement that ends up believing in human capabilities, in the capacity of human reason to understand the world, in the ideas of progress and understanding that humanity is progressing forward. And there was a very reactionary turn against this that usually took the form of an irrationalist romanticism and a turn away from reason and a turn towards the romanticization and fetishization of like pre-Enlightenment societies and an era where reason wasn't, so universally accepted, and where the ideas of a universal common humanity that we all share, it wasn't coming to the fore as like the dominant form of thinking about what we are and what connection do we have with everyone else. And what was prioritized was like difference separated from the notion of like the dialectic of identity and difference. And again, it was just a different form of tribalism. So when you look at the philosophical foundations, you have in wokeism a deep form of tribalism, which is rooted not just in postmodernism and that itself rooted in these Nazi philosophers and they themselves being based on anti-Enlightenment thinkers. And Marxism, you have the complete opposite of that. It's the completion of Enlightenment, taking it to its rational conclusion and realizing that, well, if we really want an emancipatory movement, if we really want to consider common humanity and universal reason, and if we really want progress, we have to understand that we have to look at these concretely. And there's a specific.
Isn't it funny that we have 1.4 times as many viewers as they do? And keep in mind, too, I'm not just on YouTube. We also got people on Twitter. We got people on Odyssey, Rockfin, Rumble, all over the place. I mean, and it is generally true that anytime I do stream socialism on my channel, I do give them a much broader audience of people than they would be able to get themselves, which is, just a nice little bonus, James Jones. Thank you for the super chat. Appreciate it.
Class that can emancipate humanity. You can't have this utopian socialist dream of sort of harmonizing class antagonisms. You have to look at what specific class in our era can emancipate humanity, and that was the proletariat. And in some instances, in Russia and in China and Cuba, you realize that, well, along with the proletariat as a producing class, you have the peasantry and farmers. And so, philosophically, it couldn't be more contrary to wokeism, but because what passes as Marxism in the West is this distorted image, which they have to do, because if not, people will accept Marxism and realize that it's not the same philosophy as the liberal part of the bourgeoisie. And that's why he's able to make that connection, because the Marxism itself of the West has accepted and internalized an outlook that is fundamentally antagonistic to what it claims to be.
Yeah, I had something similar to say to Carlos, because a friend of mine actually said this the other day. Like, the wokeism stuff that's going on is the same as the Cultural Revolution in China, right? And he said, right, Eddie? And I was like, actually, they're pretty much opposites. The Cultural Revolution, it made mistakes, and today they say that they regret it in China, but it was to change the culture to fit the new mode of production. Right, it was to adjust society to this new socialist mode of production that was coming about and overthrowing the backwards as Carlos said, semi-feudal landlord oligarch run mode of production that existed before. Wokeism is enforced from the top down in order to maintain the capitalist mode of production. It's to say, you know, real liberation is just diversifying the 1%.
Isn't that
rather
funny?
than actually engaging in class struggle.
So their argument is that woke is like liberal, like progressive bullshit, and it's not socialist enough. That's funny. That's hilarious. Thank you, Valley. I do appreciate it. They're literally arguing that woke isn't socialist enough for them.
Against the 1%. And I mean, if you look at who's like pushing wokeism, you see it from, you know, the CIA, or at least woke imperialism, you know, various NGOs, the institutions in power that represent the bourgeoisie. If you look at the Cultural Revolution, and in some ways you could say it was enforced top down, but it was enforced by
What? Are you shitting me? He just said, if you look at the Cultural Revolution, you know, maybe you could make the argument that the Cultural Revolution was enforced from the top down. Maybe we can make that argument. Eddie. Come on, Eddie. Go read a book about the Cultural Revolution, Eddie. Like, there was you're gonna make the argument that the Chinese fucking Cultural Revolution was a ground up initiative and not enforced by Mao? I know some people who lived through the Chinese Cultural Revolution that might disagree with the fact that might disagree with your assertion that Mao was like not a top-down authoritarian. I'm just saying. Yes, Autumn, I am very clear that he's saying the Cultural Revolution was a people's revolt. I just don't agree with him. I disagree that the Chinese Cultural Revolution was a bottom-up endeavor. And I would stand to bet, Autumn, that the millions of people who starved in China would also disagree that it was a people's revolt because, you know, they starved.
The newly ruling working class who had just overthrown the landlord class, the murderous, torturing, exploitative landlord class. It wasn't the landlord class enforcing a cultural revolution on the people below. It was the working class rising up and saying, we want to move our culture forward. So really nothing to even compare there between wokeism and the Cultural Revolution in China.
And even from the beginning, what like the sort of germs of what becomes wokeism, which is the Frankfurt School and the cultural Marxists, right? From the beginning was a bourgeois project. And if this guy were honest, he would look into
the Frankfurt School was a bourgeois product. Guys, this is why we watch Socialism Saturday right here, because this gives us the opportunity to learn what arguments the socialists are actually going to make, and that allows us to prepare for those arguments. Because I've been listening to like a lot of socialism for a while now, and I haven't yet heard the argument that the Frankfurt School was bourgeois. Interesting, not correct, but you know. Points for creativity, I suppose. Laughing my ass off, the intelligence agency CIA, as in the intelligentsia of the U.S., isn't woke. No way. Who would have thunk it? I'm just gonna read the sarcasm into that, Andre. I do appreciate the super chat. Thank you.
history of that. Well, who was spreading the work of Horkheimer and Adorno? Guess what? It was the Ford Foundation.
It is
the Rockefeller Foundation.
It is a skill.
Right? All of these giant capitalist class entities that were interested in combating Marxism with this fake Marxism. So taking the word Marxism, getting rid of the substance that was there, and putting what they want in its place. And
do you guys realize what Noah is doing? He's quite literally making the he's making the argument that the Frankfurt School wasn't real socialism. Real socialism has never been tried. The thing that you're saying is cultural Marxism. It's not Marxism. Real Marxism has never been tried. That is quite literally the fucking argument that Noah is making right now. Real, like, the Frankfurt School was not real socialism.
telling that to the public, right? And in the modern iteration, and we can go over all the empirical grounds for this, but wokeism begins, and there's work done on this, begins in corporate boardrooms, right? The First Privilege Walk, a fantastic essay by Christian Parenti, Michael Parenti, famous Marxist intellectual's son, wrote this, and he talks about how it was actually Herbert Marcuse's wife designing this privilege theory program in order to promote this ideology from the corporate masters down.
Hang on, we got a couple super chats. Thank you, Emilio, sending love from the Great Lakes. Thank you, Emilio. I do appreciate it. And then Rottweiler says, this is the parallel between Maoist red versus black identities and the woke with queer versus cis, some destabilizing dialectic, cultural revolution 2.0. Indeed it is, Rottweiler. I do appreciate the super chat and the thoughtful points, as always. Guys, now would be a great time to mount that like button. If you have not mounted the like button already, mounting the like button lets YouTube know to recommend this stream to other people so more people can come join us for the fun.
And that's how it goes from their institutions downward into the public. Whereas the Cultural Revolution, flawed and horrific as it sometimes got, child soldiers is not a good thing, but
you think
was the bottom up, right? It was an anarchistic tendency, an ultra left tendency, rather than this sort of bourgeois, rootless.
The Cultural Revolution was anarchist. Really? Because the state kind of seemed to be, distributing resources. So how is it possible that the Cultural Revolution was anarchist when the state was distributing resources?
Cosmopolitan notion of being a universal entity unto yourself, that no one can tell you what your lived experience was, etc. And not to get into a whole thing, but yeah, it's ridiculous. There's no empirical ground for what he's saying.
And what we've done here is provide, just real quick, both material objective and then subjective and ideological ways in which not only is what's called wokeism or cultural Marxism or Western Marxism fundamentally antagonistic to the traditions of Marxism that have constructed socialism, primarily Marxism-Leninism. They're not only different, they're antagonistic. As you mentioned, while Horkheimer, Adorno, French theory, certain French Marxists are being propped up by the Ford Foundation, by the Rockefeller Foundation, by the State Department. They're an integral part of the Congress for Cultural Freedom and other anti-communist programs that aimed at creating a compatible left. While those people are getting propped up, who's getting suppressed? What form of Marxism is getting suppressed? It's Marxism-Leninism, right? You have to hide your Marxist-Leninist text, and you couldn't read or often find stuff from the Soviet Union or from revolutionary China. And, you would get in trouble if you would assign these sorts of readings in the university. And while it was perfectly fine to have some of these key Frankfurt School people teaching, right? And there were some cases where they'd get harassed by far-right conservative people, but that was in contradiction to what the leading forms of bourgeois ideology, bourgeois ideology was taking. So you have that fake Marxism being propped up. Marxism-Leninism being suppressed and repressed.
Hang on, I almost missed a member chat from Nick Incognito. I apologize, Nick. I didn't see it come up on StreamYard, but I did catch it on YouTube. Nick, thank you for being a member of the channel for 9 months. They have no clue what they are talking about or purposefully lying because because it will be right this time and they will be amongst the leaders. That's exactly right, Nick. Thank you. And again, shout out to Nick for identifying this stream for us today because he's the reason we're watching it.
Prohibited. And so it's when you look at both ideologically how its philosophical assumptions are completely opposite, and then materially how the political economy of knowledge that props one up completely represses the other, to say that they're the same is to be as wrong as you could possibly be about anything.
Real quick, we are only a minute into this, as Eddie just told us in the.
You guys are killing it in the super chats tonight. I really do appreciate it. Go capitalism for the win. Under Flower Pot, if I grab my English translation of On Guerrilla Warfare or my other Mao book, Mao explains the difference between peasant and proletariat. Total lie. Thank you so much, Under Flower Pot. If you'd like to elaborate a little bit more, you don't need to send in a super chat or anything, but I'll look for your chat in the stream. I do appreciate it.
The private chat we have, but I just want to say before we continue, he looked right here. He looks like he's about to order the gabagool. Sorry.
He does. Bring me the gabagool.
Woke is Marxism. That's a very provocative statement. It's something you will certainly hear it is not, that it is different. And the professors and the philosophers will spend a large amount of time explaining to you why. No, it's about economics when it's Marxism. This is social, this is cultural.
Again.
It's not different.
Another lie. Marxism is not just about economics. It's both.
You don't
say.
It
is the social and the economic.
So Noah, you're saying that Marx isn't just about economics? Oh, tell us more, Noah. You're saying that Marx wanted to upheave and have his little cultural revolution as well? Oh, thank you, Noah, for confirming that James Lindsay just told the truth. Thank you for that, Noah. We appreciate it.
Way that we go about producing all the things that make us society, informing how that society looks. Sorry.
Thank you, Noah.
I need you to think biologically for one moment, and I don't mean about your bodies. We could do that. That's a different topic. I want you to think how we organize plants and animals when we study them. They're species, but above species, there are the genus of the animals. So you think like the cats.
Hang on, we got a super chat from Terry. Terry says, Dr. K, how should a good communist mount the like button? Well, you can mount the like button in whichever way makes you feel most comfortable. I don't want to tell anyone what to do. I'm an anarchist. I'm not a communist. I'm not woke. I don't tell you what to do. But you can mount the like button hard. You can mount the like button soft. You can mount the like button gently. You can spank the like button if you want. You can do whatever you want to that like button as long as you do something to it. The like button doesn't want to be left alone. Don't let you could even let the like button mount you, I suppose. I mean, in a far off abstract reality. But you can do whatever you want to that like button, guys, as long as you do something. Can't sit in, gotta get in the game at some point. That's all I'm saying. Thank you for the super chat.
All the cats, but you have tigers, you have lions, you have house cats, you have whatever, leopards, many different kinds of cats. If we think of Marxism as a genus of ideological thought, then classical economic Marxism is a species. Radical feminism is a species in this same genus. Critical race theory is a species in this genus. Queer theory is a species in this genus. Post-colonial theory.
And this is all the stuff Gabriel Rockhill has criticized and said has grown out of this, anti-Marxist Marxism, this CIA, Ford Foundation, Rockefeller Foundation.
Because functionally it results in the same thing.
This is the other side of that, right? That distorts Marxism, and then you have these right-wingers who say that's what Marxism is. Attack it because Marxism is wokeism and all these fancy, trendy bourgeois theories.
And you can tell that not only are they not reading Marxism when they talk about it, they're not even reading these other theories that they claim to be Marxism. I've read them. Finishing a PhD in philosophy, I've had to read all of this shit. one of the main targets of all of them is Marxism. They precisely position themselves as like the radical and always
Yes, Andre. Now he is comparing savage animals with humans. Yes, indeed. Thank you for the super chat. I appreciate it. I have a fun story about the dead Kennedys. I'll tell it to you guys sometime. Anyway, moving on.
Marxism takes the form of, no, Marxism is actually not radical. Socialism is actually not qualitatively different from what we've seen in capitalism. We need something so radically new, a third way. And usually, the vast majority of the time, the main targets of their critique is the existing forms of anti-capitalist arrangements, socialist countries, and the dominant form of Marxism that has existed in these countries, which is Marxism-Leninism. So it's they not only not read the Marxists, but they also don't read the people who they say the Marxists that are Marxists.
I'm pretty sure
it's so
James Lindsay
intellectually
reads everything.
ignorant that one would have to be extremely disconnected from any of these conversations to even think about making those connections.
In fact, the way they approach looking at the world in all of these hip bourgeois theories is precisely the opposite of how Marxism views it. How we view how people are made into people and how change happens is the opposite of them. And they criticize us and say that because Marx was from Germany, he couldn't possibly understand the situation arising in Africa. It is so fundamentally different. There is a wall between the two that Marx cannot possibly comprehend the general laws of development for all of society, because all of society is necessarily cut off from each other and distinct. Like Carlos was saying earlier, it's very tribalistic, and this is why it shares the same assumptions as Nazis, right? Why the same premises just lead to different conclusions.
It's absolutized relativism. Whereas our relativism, when we have it, it's always concrete, like and embedded within an understanding of like the necessary relationship of the relative and the universal. But do we want to get to this real quick, Eddie?
Yeah, do it.
So Yellow Like Parenti says, by the way, the Yellow Parenti lectures are the best. I've joked before that in the same way that in bourgeois schools today, they bring out the TV in the middle of class and they put some BS documentary. We'll be doing that in socialism, but with Parenti. Carlos, was Marx discussed in any of your philosophy classes? I was a Phil major, and not one class discussed him, even though he's a giant on par with Hegel, Kant, Aquinas, Plato, etc. I was kind of lucky. I was in a university where the director of or my philosophy counselor when I was in undergrad was the head of the DSA. So Marxism was all over the place, and then the political science professor who I took the most classes with was also a part of DSA, and his partner
of America.
was another leading member of DSA, and they were all well, the philosophy one had more anarchistic tendencies, but the political science one had studied in China, and he was
hang on, Julie's making a point that I want to, we've actually talked about this. Julie said, these dudes are boring. I think they are boring on purpose. We've talked about this, where we really think like this is like training grounds, guys. You need to learn how to sit through boring shit if you want to understand these people. This is why we have knitting. This is why we have beer. This is why we have bingo. I would encourage everyone to pick up some sort of hobby that you can do while watching streams. I know a lot of you guys watch a lot more YouTube than I do, so you probably have something lying around, right? And so like we really think that these people are purposefully trying to bore us into not listening to what they have to say, because if they can bore us into not listening, then they win. They get to have their little planning meetings and their little code word adjusted language right out in the open where everyone can see it. But most people are gonna be like, it's boring and it's long and I don't want to watch it. But like, I understand that it can be boring. That's why we have activities and alcohol. And if you got something better than alcohol, more power to you, man, because it makes it bearable. So we can sit our asses down and listen to what's going on. And when we find those golden nuggets where they say the quiet part out loud, because they will say the quiet part out loud at some point, possibly several times throughout the stream, then we can hear it and then we can take advantage of it, right? So you got to sit through the boring bits and the cringy bits to get to the golden nuggets. That's all I'm saying. And Philosophist is smoking his lemon cherry gelato. Ooh, enjoy that, Philosophist. That sounds delightful.
Definitely pro-communist, and even the ones that had different ideological preferences, they were not like deeply anti-communist or anything. So Marx was always there for me, and pretty much every philosophy professor
No insulting people, John Doe.
Had sympathies for socialism, if not were explicit Marxists. So, but that's very rare, and in graduate school, it wasn't the same experience, even though people weren't like anti-communist explicitly. There's more of these different ideologies that James Lindsay is here trying to say are all derivatives of Marxism.
And again, if he had actually learned about these theories, he'd see that they have nothing whatsoever in common with Marxism. So again, he's lying about something, either presenting himself as an expert on things he has no idea and knows he hasn't learned about, or directly lying about these things. Either way, Lion James Lindsay loses again.
You bet. Noah, you want to answer the super chat we got from Lemonheads? What's you mean by cosmopolitan? I live in an urban city, and honestly, this offends me. Lemonheads is triggered. Just kidding. Thank you for the super chat.
We love Lemonheads, by the way. He's great.
Yes.
No, there's a difference between cosmopolitan and urban, first of all. So I live in an urban city. I grew up in the inner city, actually, in Cleveland. What cosmopolitanism is, and its more formal term, rootless cosmopolitanism. It's a sort of ideological view of gentrifiers. Think about it that way, right? The middle classes that, to give you a modern example, when people, middle class people go to the left and say they are an internationalist, what they really mean is that they're a rootless cosmopolitan, right? They don't really view nation.
Ooh, Beth is going through her coins because I'm a capitalist and I have plenty of money as a result. Beth has an amazing coin collection. Great job, Beth. I do appreciate it. Thank you.
As material things having relationships with each other, they'll say, I'm not an American because I don't view myself as an American, rather than recognizing the material world around them that helps create them and shapes how they think.
Are they ever going to let James Lindsay talk? I actually want to hear what James Lindsay had to say.
And so what they get to instead of internationalism, which is the Marxist position, right? That workers all share a common humanity and history, et cetera, they get to a sort of globalism, for lack of a better word, where they believe that, you know, their universal individual experience in the particular is universal. Where, I don't know, do you want to keep going from here, Carlos?
Yes, it's rooted in the forms of, I guess, Enlightenment humanism, which precede Marxism's critique and sublation of Enlightenment humanism, where the individual human and the common humanity is treated in a very abstract way, which ignores the very real.
These guys are like, we're going to put James Lindsay in the title because that's going to get us more views, but we're really just going to pontificate about whatever the fuck we want without actually letting James Lindsay talk.
Class and national determinations and racial determinations in some contexts that shape our experience as human beings. And you know, the Marxists, in part, like Marxism takes up this Enlightenment tradition, but it takes it up through a process of overcoming it. That means that there's a part of it that's critiqued and canceled, and another more rational part that's elevated. And what's done is, you know, the idea is that yes, we still want to emancipate humanity at large and overcome alienation, and but we are living in societies that are structured through classes, and where there's exploiters, exploited, some classes in the middle that have a little bit of both. And the idea ends up being that really, in order to emancipate all of humanity, you end up having to find what specific class has the capacity to do that. Very early on, Marx said it was the proletariat because it was the class that endured all of the evils of existing society. And so by removing all of those for itself, it removes it for everyone else. So the this idea of like cosmopolitanism, I see it as rooted in like a pre-Marxian form of Enlightenment universalism, which is the word that Noah used, rootless. That means it's not rooted, it's not concrete, it's an abstract, almost empty universal.
That's plaguing Europe is a species in this genus, and they have something that binds them together called intersectionality that makes them treated as if they are all one thing.
Come on. Are we ever going to get like 2 minutes into this video?
Probably not. Not if he keeps saying stuff like this.
Right.
I mean, all it is, it's exactly what you said when you sent us this video. He's just taking all the hip liberal bourgeois theories and calling them Marxism.
Right. And intersection, let's go over just real quick why intersectionality is a bourgeois theory and not a Marxist, right? So remember all the things we
Oh God, Kimberly Crenshaw is about to be so thrilled to hear that Kimberly Crenshaw is part of the bourgeois. Nicole Hannah-Jones as well, to be honest about it.
were just saying about the tribalism and why it's so similar to Nazi ideology. Intersectionality considers all of these different forms of oppression that are real oppression it's trying to address, don't get me wrong, but it considers them cut off from each other, and they can intersect
No, they don't.
in certain individuals, right?
Mm,
Whereas Marxism has a deeper
I don't think
material
that's
view
correct.
of why this happens.
Oh, we're watching Carlos explaining
The struggle against
intersectionality.
racism
Oh, good.
is, for example, a concrete form that the class struggle, which is a universal, takes on due to the
Noah, you guys are just making shit up, Noah. You guys are the ones making shit up that you obviously do not listen to the people who actually advance these ideas. I've probably listened to Kimberly Crenshaw more than you have, Noah.
particular conditions that give rise to it, right? Chattel slavery goes into Jim Crow, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. These are all just forms of class struggle. And to use the genus species, it's more like class struggle is the genus, and Black liberation, for example, is the species. Intersectionality says that these groups are antagonistic until they intersect in certain people.
That's not exactly what intersectionality says, but really nice try. Marx and Lenin with Chinese characteristics is Mao's writing, whole essays, the slur, he never said that, vacuously true, serpent to Eve level lie. Yeah, I agree with you. I trust. I know that if James Lindsay says something, he's coming from somewhere because dude's got an eidetic memory. But thank you for the super chat. I do appreciate it. It is indeed an intellectual circle jerk, hedgehog pancakes. It is indeed.
And just real quick, I pulled up a video where I sort of debunked the idea that Marxism and intersectionality are compatible, and I show why its internal logics are antagonistic. Marxism understands the world as already being an interconnected and in a universal interconnectedness to everything else, and intersectionality artificially reifies that in order to then make its project about artificially reconnecting it. And the ways of approaching the question of like the relationships of race to class, it's very bourgeois in the sense that it's embedded in like separate.
Hang on, got another super chat. Thank you guys for all the amazing super chats. Noah N. In Marx's On the Jewish Question, Marx says capitalist and Jews are synonyms. Well, yeah. Hitler and Marx are feuding cousins. Wish I could ask them to explain. I think that would be, Noah, I think that would be a very good question for Midwestern Marx. I would like to learn Midwestern Marx's perspective on the Jewish question, as it were. Thank you for the super chat. Hey, Amazon Eve, I saw you fighting with Mike Harlow earlier. Intersectionality, when translating Crenshaw's presupposition into public policy, means all marginalized identities must carry water for queer Black feminism. I think, you know what, Amazon Eve? I think that is a really astute point. Thank you for that. I do agree. Yes, they called Kimberly Crenshaw bourgeois. They did indeed.
Separating things from each other, reifying things, and treating them as isolated forms that then artificially get brought together through the intersectional method, and that's wrong. It divorces. It fails to see how, like, the struggle against like racism, the struggle against Jim Crow and lynching, and all those struggles weren't just like anti-racist struggles separated from like the class struggle. There were forms of the class struggle, and the same thing with the women's struggle for the suffrage movement, and all these different struggles. They are forms of class struggle. They are struggles that antagonize.
So it kind of sounds like Carlos is agreeing with James Lindsay's original supposition that things like feminism and critical race theory and queer theory are all parts of Marxism, because Carlos is literally saying right now that feminism is basically another form of class struggle. So it kind of seems like he's actually confirming what James Lindsay said earlier that they said was debunked, which apparently was not actually debunked.
People, a part of the people, with the ruling capitalist elite interest. And that's part of the difference that you have today with some of these bourgeois feminist or bourgeois anti-racist, bourgeois intersectionality struggles, which is that they don't challenge capital in ways in which the old school anti-racist
they all
struggle
talk about
or feminist
challenging capital. What are you
did.
talking
Like,
about? They
they
talk
were class
about
struggles because
anti-capitalism all the
were
time.
rooted in working class movements or
They
parts
don't
of
even know
working
what these
class
people
movements,
say.
and they challenged capitalism, they challenged imperialism. Today, that's turned into its opposite in it being absorbed within bourgeois academies and bourgeois NGOs and the media and leading institutions.
Hang on, got a super chat from the one, the only Amazon Eve. Crenshaw's intersectionality is a naked power grab. Keep up the great work, Carlin. Thank you, Amazon Eve. You keep up the great work as well. I do appreciate you. Who would have thought? We've come so far, Amazon Eve. And then we got another super chat from Jeff. They're presenting their arguments as if they are synthesizing and interpreting their references, but they don't seem to be citing or quoting specific works or authors. It's very unacademic approach. It is a very unacademic approach, isn't it, Jeff? I agree with that. They're not giving us sources. We can't double check what they're saying. I think, especially Carlos. Carlos is in a PhD program. Carlos understands what citing sources means. He should have a whole list of them. He should have a whole database of sources. Just saying. Thank you, Jeff. Appreciate it.
And so it's opposite in the sense that today, anti-racism or anti-sexism or all these different pseudo-progressive ideologies are used in order to proliferate the interest of capitalism and imperialism. And the connection of all of these is what we end up calling wokeism. And we consider it to be central to the ideology of the liberal bourgeoisie today. And
holy shit. Holy shit. Eddie has the SJW haircut. He has the SJW haircut where they have like this shaved thing on the side. I saw so much of this haircut at the Socialist Reproductive Justice Conference. I've never seen a man with it though. Eddie, like, this is like the social justice haircut where they have this shaved on the sides and then they have it longer in the back. And usually he'd have to have less bangs, but apparently he needs to get a haircut or something. But it's a weird social justice thing. I don't really understand it. If anyone understands the origin of this haircut, let me know. But it's very odd that he has it.
Antagonistic to the tradition of the people that a lot of these theorists in the academy end up appealing to, people like Du Bois the old school Angela Davis and Claudia Jones and these other revolutionary communist figures that fought for the emancipation of women, the emancipation of Black people and of colonized people as a struggle against capital.
Convince you of that, because Marx had a very simple proposition, but we get lost. We think that Marx was talking.
Hang on, we got another super chat from Roslyn. Hi, Carlin. How goes the knitting? I've got my morning coffee and I'm enjoying the stream. Well, thank you for the super chat, Roslyn. Give me 1 second. I'll be able to show you what I'm knitting. I am working on the I don't even remember what this guy, the spring cleaning shawl or something from West Knits, and I'm finishing it. Actually, is that the front? That's the front. You can see it. It's getting pretty good. And right now I'm working on one of the I guess arms, like the one like this big one of these big final sections, gonna make it into a giant triangle. But look at all those pretty colors. Oh, thank you for asking, Rosalind. I do appreciate it. Enjoy your coffee.
About economics because he often talked about economics. He wrote a book called Capital. It's a very famous book. And we think, well, this is about economic theory, but this isn't true. It's only true on the surface. If we go below the surface, what Marx was talking about was something different. We know what Marx's hypothesis was that we must seize the means of production if we're going to bring socialism to the nations, to the world. We have to seize the means of production. So we have to ask, what does he mean? And if we think that it's about capital, then we miss what he means. If you think it's about the means of production in the factory with a hammer and the means of production in the field with a sickle, then you miss what it means. Because Marx explained what makes human beings special in his earlier writings. And what makes human beings special is that man...
I want to stop it there because the means of production is very strictly defined in Marx. Right. And I mean, he's right in that it's not just about economics. Capital is an analysis of the capital.
What is the definition, Eddie?
And the kind of society that brings about. But, it is focused on production in every society.
You sure that's a road you want to go down, James Jones?
In some way.
Seems to be a flawed decision.
And, the relationship to the means of production determines a lot about what you do and how you live your life in society and how that society works. But means of production themselves are very strictly defined. He says they're not talking about the hammer. They're not talking about the sickle. Yes, they are. The means of production is the tools. It's the raw materials. I believe land is included in there. Buildings, factories, machines. Right? It's the means of production.
So
it's the
everything
things that are
you need
used
to make
in
a
production,
functional society.
that when combined with human labor power create.
So Eddie is saying that Marxists don't want to seize everything. They just want to seize the land, the machinery, the tools you need. They just want to they like they just want to seize every aspect of society. And then you contribute your human labor to the means of production that they've already seized, because you will own nothing and you will be happy. But I'm really glad Eddie specifically enumerated that Marxists do, in fact, want to seize the land as a means of production, because, as we all know, Marxists want to abolish all private property, to include your children, which they currently consider to be private property, and they want to liberate the children from the adult supremacy of their parents. And if you think I'm making that shit up, go back to last week's Socialism Saturday, where we literally watched a presentation all about liberating the children from adult supremacy.
Under capitalism, commodities or create use values, create the things that we need to survive, create your house, create the food that you eat. So Marx, didn't say much of like exactly what socialism would look like. He didn't describe exactly what it would look like. And he certainly didn't call for like a cultural revolution or anything. He just said
seize the means of production, but not a cultural revolution.
The capitalists own the means of production. And if you do not own the means of production, that means your only option is to sell your labor in a market in order to survive. That's how our current system works. And Marx said the workers, the people selling their labor, should take hold of the means of production so that they can organize society in a rational way and eventually move to a classless society where everyone's.
If the workers wanted to do that, the workers could start their own fucking business. They could even start a co-op if they really wanted to. And that way, the workers could control the means of production that they themselves own while not taking shit away from other people. Am I speaking crazy talk? I don't think I am.
A worker, and everyone has equal ownership, or not, maybe not equal, but everyone has ownership of the means of production, the tools. So when Marx is making these economic analyses, they're material. They have their basis in reality. So when we're talking about means of production, it's not some abstract thing. It's a very concrete thing that has a very concrete meaning that James Lindsay is going to try and obscure here.
And not only did he say the workers should seize the means of production, he says they will, right? But aside from that, what he's going to try to do here is to go over a very basic point of Marxism. Everything else in society gets its character from how production is carried out. And the reason seizing the means of production is important is because it resolves the contradiction between the relations of production, the worker and owner, and the forces of production, right? The fact that there's one owner and we need all these people working at the factory. And this contradiction creates the struggle between the classes and defines how we look at things, right? What he's going to say and try to argue is that all of the deviations, all of the people who abandon Marxism and say, no, the source is in culture, are still Marxist and still following Marxist logic. But this right here is the crux of it, and why we know he's lying about understanding Marxism. If he understood even the very, very basics, the first few things you learn, he would know that these, like the Frankfurt School, the culturalists, etc., abandoned Marxism completely and became anti-Marxists. Another
right.
one.
His whole basis of analysis is the same as the Western Marxists, and that's why he has to say.
Hang on.
Yeah.
Gloria says, have I ever done any work with worker co-ops? Yes, I have, and I will never do that shit again. It's a goddamn fucking nightmare. Like, worker co-ops are so dysfunctional, honestly. And part of the reason is it is a co-op, so everyone feels like they have ownership over everything, which is like at their literal fucking business structure. It's very similar to, there's a business structure called a holocracy that became really popular about 10 years ago. And holocracies, actually Zappos, well, last time I checked, Zappos was a holocracy. I don't know if they still are now, but they were a holocracy. When they became a holocracy, they ended up laying off about, well, not laying off. Actually about 30% of their staff quit because they hated it so much. Anyway, the problem with worker co-ops and things like holocracies is people do actually need a hierarchical structure in business. They need it from a psychological level. There are people that like, people need to be given guardrails. They need to be told, do this, not that. And most people just, this is going to sound bad, but most people don't actually want to be the leader. And that kind of makes sense, right? Because becoming a leader adds extra responsibilities, and most people just don't want those responsibilities. They want to be told what to do and then get paid for being told like what to do and then doing it, right? It's much easier to be a worker than it is to be a leader. And so you get into these things like worker co-ops and like holocracies where there might be like an informal leadership structure, but really it's like, it's very confusing and convoluted. People don't really know what the bounds are, and oftentimes they're not willing to actually put those boundaries in place to say, this person is in charge of this person is in charge of this person is in charge of this person. So I don't like them. I don't like working with them. I don't think they can really be made into like functional organizations in which everyone's going to be happy. But hey, everyone owns it, so they're happy with that. But it's not going to be a good environment for most people to work in, I don't think. But if you like it, you like it. Whatevs.
yeah, we think it's capital and we think it's political economy that he's looking at. But really, if you go to the young Marx, if you go to Marx when he's 26 years old and writing the economic and philosophical manuscripts, it's totally something else. It has nothing to do with just political economy. And that's the same move of the quote unquote Western Marxists. And it was a move that was grounded in a reaction to Marxism Leninism. They didn't like Marxism Leninism. They didn't like the fact that you had a socialist society where the working class was in power. They were developing the forces of production, increasing the living standards of hundreds of millions of people. And because it wasn't abolishing the state, or because it wasn't fully implementing a non-exploitative society or a fully non-alienated society, they were criticizing it because it was imperfect to whatever socialism was in their heads. And the way that they did that while still holding on to Marx was saying, really, the essence of Marxism, it's not these thousands of pages of published work on political economy. It's not the thousands of pages of unpublished and recently published work on political economy and the elaboration of the dialectic materialist worldview. It's actually this short, 200 or so pages.
Hang on, we got a super chat coming in, and there it is from Noah. Thank you, Noah, for the super chat. Carlin, do you know the channel Tick History? Best Marx/Hitler history channel around. He reads source material and destroys lying propaganda. No, I do not know that channel, Noah, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a screenshot of this here super chat, and I'm going to look into that later. I do appreciate it. Thanks so much.
That he writes in 1844 that he explicitly decides never to publish, but that's the real Marx. The Marx before he develops Marxism is the real Marx, and it's completely absurd. But by him making that same move, he's functioning within the same logic, within the same philosophical assumptions as these Western Marxists and these people that come from the same milieu that end up then developing ideologically or serving as the ideological grounds for what we call today wokeism. So it's, he thinks he's fighting against it, but he's really working with the same assumptions as the people that he's fighting against. And his only move is to say, well, the people who were always the enemies of these people, they're actually the same thing. And insofar as you understand like Marxists in the way that the vast majority of people in the American Academy do, as the Frankfurt School, French theory, then he's technically not wrong. But that's why our task is to say that's not Marxism. That's not Marxism. That has nothing to do with the Marxism that has developed around the world. That's a distorted CIA-compatible left form of Marxism or critical theory, whatever you want to call it.
And that just reminds me real quick before we move on. I really think you're too nice in letting them call themselves Western Marxists, brother. Like you were just saying, it's not Marxism. And that sort of trick of language that they both do has a relationship and reinforces itself. So between Lindsay and them, they sort of play off each other, rationalizing and justifying their use of Marxism off of that. But if we, as Marx himself says, we do not judge a man by his opinion of himself, right? We judge it against whether it adds up to what the real world says of it, right? So in this, the substance isn't Marxism. So let's just call it, bourgeois culturalism or whatever. It doesn't matter.
Bourgeois culturalism.
Nazi tribalism, maybe.
All right.
That was its most developed form in Heidegger,
is a being that is incomplete and knows that he is incomplete. He is a man whose true nature has been forgotten to him, which is social being. He is a socialist at heart who doesn't realize it. And the reason he doesn't realize it is because of the economic conditions operating as the means of construction or production, not just of the economy, but of him, but of man, of society, and particularly of history. Marx said that he had the first scientific study of history. How was history produced? By man, doing man's activity, and man's key activity was economic activity, as he saw it. And so economic production doesn't just produce the goods and services of the economy, it produces society itself. And society in turn produces man. He called this the inversion of praxis. And so
stop real quick. Okay, so while what he said was actually mostly correct, That's not what you call the inversion of praxis.
I was gonna say I don't know if I even know what that means or if I've ever heard that.
What
It's
does that
oldie
mean,
time.
Noah?
Go ahead,
Explain it to
Carlos.
us. What does that mean?
It has nothing to do. I mean, it's the inversion of praxis. What the fuck with the inversion of praxis is just like going back to forms of bourgeois idealism that bifurcate subject and object, and thought and activity. You know, praxis is just the notion that at every instance there's not this.
I will say this. I actually don't like the term praxis because I don't think normal people understand what it actually means. And I don't like Lindsay trying to say, like, they don't teach critical race theory in school. It's critical race theory in praxis because, again, normal people don't know what that means. And so I actually hate that he uses this word, but, like, it's his deal, man. He's allowed to do what he wants. I just believe in, like, trying to get as close as I can to, like, what is the actual, like, what is actually happening in a way that normal people can identify when it's showing up in their lives. And that sometimes means that I don't use the proper academic terms because guess what? Normal people are not academics. And so if we're using academic terms to describe everything, it's like normal people can't understand it. So I hate that he uses that word in general. And then James Jones says Palafieri also refers to the inversion of praxis. Indeed. Praxis equals process. Yeah, but normal people don't know that.
Thing on one end that's subject and on the other end object, or this thing that we have as activity or practice, and on the other hand thought or ideas, we're always with both conjoined. Every time we're acting, we're simultaneously thinking, and every time we're thinking, we're simultaneously acting. Right? It's a unity of subject and object, a unity of action and thought, and that's a revolutionary step forward from the history of philosophy that has had to tackle 1,000,001 problems because it starts from these assumptions that divide subject and object, the res cogitans from the res extensa, the thinking substance from the extended substance.
Hang on.
And this is over.
Fish Addict says, I consider myself to be normal. Guys, here's the thing that everyone needs to wrap their head around. If you're literally sitting here on a Saturday at almost 8 p.m. watching socialism with me on the internet, you are not normal. You're not. I'm not saying it as an insult. I'm not saying you should be self-conscious about it or anything, but people who are watching socialism at 8 p.m. on a Saturday night for fun are not normal. We're not. We understand this far better than normal people. Okay? We are like, if you've ever seen like an early adopter curve where like it's basically around like products. So like the very first people to like get the iPad or the Apple Watch when it first came out, those are very early adopters. Most people waited like a while to get the iPad and the Apple Watch and stuff like that. We are at the tip of the fucking spear. I know it's crazy to say that you know more than normal people, but you know more than normal people. And we should all just embrace that. Yes, we're a bunch of fucking weirdos. That's right. We're all mad here. Exactly. But it is quite a thing to wrap your head around, isn't it? That you understand what is going on in the world more than the vast majority of people in this country. Truly. Truly. It's crazy, but it's true. Beth says, truth seeker. Yep. Indeed.
Come first in Hegel, and then it's developed by Marx. That's why Lenin says in his philosophical notebooks that the critique that Marx makes of the young Hegelians is a Hegelian critique. And that's what you see in the 11th thesis on Feuerbach. And I have a whole chapter on that in my upcoming book on Hegel, Marxism, and dialectics. But the inversion of praxis, what the fuck? I have never heard of that. And I've read not just like all the classics, but also all the stuff that the Western Academy tells you is Marxism. I've never heard of the phrase the inversion of praxis. It's just completely ridiculous, made up nonsense. And the fact that someone can get up, wear a suit and a tie. If you wear, like from now on, if you wear a suit and a tie, you better know your shit. If you're going to give a speech in a suit and a tie, know your shit. And if it looks like you're,
Thank you,
when I first saw a clip of this, it looked like he was in the UN, and I was like, who let a sophomore libertarian in the UN to give a speech on
You
Marxism?
think James Lindsay's a fucking libertarian? I wish James Lindsay was a libertarian. Perhaps someday James Lindsay will become a libertarian, but for right now, he's a disaffected fucking liberal atheist.
Are these people not embarrassed? Like, this is embarrassing. It's hard to watch this, because it's
They have no
cringe.
shame. There's no shame there. It's
None
all like,
whatsoever.
I'm getting paid money to do this. I'm being successful right now, even though it's just a complete lack of intellectual rigor to the point of, any of us would be deeply embarrassed to put something out there that was this wrong. Inversion of Praxis was an episode of Star Trek. That's hilarious.
Look, we're gonna get through this, I promise, and we'll sort of let him go a little bit. But I want to draw your attention to the fact that we've been going almost an hour now, and we've only been able to make it through not even 5 minutes.
Because you won't shut the
Have
fuck
you guys
up and
lost
listen.
count of the amount of lies? I have too. And if this clown is their top thinker, it's no wonder he can't actually answer the Marxists criticizing him, because he's just a con man.
Yeah, what we should have done is just like, you guys ever watch Cinema Sins, where they just like tally up the number of errors in every movie? Should have just done that, counted up this guy's lies. We'd be at 100 by now.
We should do that. Just get a counter and do that for this kind of stuff in the future.
I like it. That's a good idea, honestly.
Sees the means of production, and he's talking about factories and fields. He's actually talking about how we construct who we are as human beings so that we might complete ourselves, so that we might complete history. And at the end of history, mankind will remember that he is a social being.
He is talking about, I'm sorry to stop it again, but he is talking about the factories and fields, but that affects who we are. That affects how we think.
So
that
you agree with James Lindsay?
The goods that
You're
we have
literally
available
agreeing
to
with what he just
distribute
said,
and
Eddie.
consume. It affects what our life activity is. You spend most of your time at work. So then that in turn affects the culture and affects the society. So the society is based upon and largely stems from production. Also, it's not just the production of, agricultural goods or industrial goods, like he's saying. The bourgeoisie also controls the production of information. They control the media, the education system. So, this control over the means of production, which gives you control over production itself, turns into, or gives you great control in society and conditions the way that society runs on a daily basis. So it's not that Marx, was talking about one or the other, either culture or economic production. He was talking about the both and the unity between them.
Right. And that's not to say, like, I made a critique earlier of like him making the statement that we have to go back to the early Marx and how the Western Marxists did. That's not to say that we should cancel out the early Marx. I think there's a rational kernel there that ends up getting developed and refined
Exactly.
and becomes more rigorous as he studies political economy and develops and matures as a thinker and develops along with Engels the dialectical materialist worldview, not just view of society, but worldview, view of nature, thinking, and society. But it's still a deeply humanistic worldview.
I might get
again,
my
you could
coconut
argue that's
almond
partly,
stout from
grounded
Baxter
in
Brewing.
his ideological influences stemming from the Enlightenment and the spirit of the age that he's working with, and which he can never
look, it's
divorce
got an
himself
orange
really
thing on
from.
the
We can't have the forms of thinking of that we'll have 200 years from now, but that humanistic essence is still there. So he's not wrong in that point specifically. Yeah, we want to transform society, and he shows scientifically how that's the case. That's why it's scientific socialism. But we don't want socialism just so that the structures and institutions and the way you produce is different. We want it because implied in that is a higher level of human freedom. The first time we can actually, in terms of...
All right, we got a super chat from Jenny's getting inky with it. Thank you, Jenny. Bing. They can't make it through because they have to pontificate their own erroneously arrived at thoughts every 5 seconds. They are worse than a liberal white woman. Isn't it the truth? What's worse than a liberal white woman? A socialist white man. Thank you, Jenny. Appreciate it. Also got a super chat from Kyle. We may not agree on everything, but I appreciate what you're doing. Well, thank you, Kyle. I do appreciate that. I may not agree on everything with you too, but I do appreciate the money. You know, I was thinking earlier, like the other day, I was thinking about how like when I like just decided that the world was gonna burn anyway, and I was just gonna like enjoy the show, and like I hated the right and I hated the left and everyone sucked. I feel like I hate my political enemies just a little bit less now. I'm just saying. We disagree. It's cool. The world's gonna burn anyway. No use in fighting about it. Anyway, even these jackasses, as much as we might make fun of them as literally being worse than liberal white women, I don't hate them. I think they're misguided and wrong, but like I don't hate them. Like whatever. I meant it when I said I would invite Carlos on my channel and we would have a great chat and he could say whatever he wants and we wouldn't attack him or anything. I just don't care anymore. The world's burning anyway. I'll tweet it. Fine, I'll fucking tweet it. If I tweet this right now, everyone on Twitter better retweet it, okay? Thank you, guys. Let's keep going.
You know, the unity of existence and the essence. The first time humanity can actually be free. That's why he calls class society the prehistory of humanity and says that humanity's actual history starts with socialism, with the kingdom of freedom. And that's sort of an inversion on Hegel, who looked at the freedom and historical progress in terms of freedom from the standpoint of the notion of freedom. So he develops the idea that we have achieved the end of history because we've came to the idea with Christianity that all men are free. And, we start with one is free, some are free, and then all are free. And we come to the end and it's a matter of realizing it. Marx says, no, what matters is actual freedom. And so this can only start with socialism. But that ethic is still there. And we still want to radically transform human beings and create what Jay called a new man. It's an ethical political transformation, as Gramsci
Thank you,
spoke
honest
of,
dog.
that we're
Appreciate
involved
that.
in. So, and that's
I just tweeted that.
that's the part which I think is usually the most appealing to people. I've been seeing quite a few interviews from Gabriel Mate, Aaron Mate's dad. He's a prominent psychologist, someone working, I think, within the tradition of like so-called Marxist psychology and the tradition of like Erich Fromm and others who wish to overcome the bourgeois division of the individual and society of thinking from the body, of our minds from the body, and who ends up coming to very radical conclusions. And I just saw this interview he did with one of these bourgeois channels. Got millions of views, but the guy always has like business moguls on. And they're talking about how our society is genuinely sick, how, it's a trauma and stress-ridden society that's literally killing people, and it ends up manifesting itself in these chronic illnesses that we assume are just genetically handed down and that they're just luck of the draw illnesses, when in reality, they're rooted in stress and in trauma and in the society that produces all of that within our families and then thereby within individuals. And your question is, well, how do we overcome this so that we can be live the sorts of human lives that allow us to flourish and develop virtuously, right? For those that are in my Marxism and History of Philosophy classes, what we'll be talking about, not this week coming up, but the next week, right? Aristotle's theory of virtue ethics and Marxism and developing a communist virtue ethics. How can we have a society where humans could be freer to flourish? And the guy has to end up, the bourgeois interviewer has to end up kind of accepting, yeah, we need to radically overroot the forms of social life that we have so that all of these fetters for human freedom are removed. Capitalism not only fetters our ability to produce more and more efficiently, it also fetters the superstructure, which means it fetters us philosophically and culturally and artistically, aesthetically. And it's a project that is deeply embedded in creating the greatest conditions for human freedom and flourishing. That's why it's deeply humanistic. And I'll leave it there. I don't want to keep ranting. I can rant about this all day.
It was an awesome rant. I'm not going to complain, brother. I just want to add real quick that two things. One, what Lindsay here is saying is sort of not far off base in that he's describing the basic base and superstructure, which he's then going to pretend you can deviate from, right? When it is the center of materialism itself, and you can't. But what happens is he's acting as if Marx just kind of believes this ad hoc, just out of nowhere. When Marx goes to great lengths to substantiate why this is the case and how this develops out of Hegel, Engels does the same thing, even drawing on the limits of previous societies and explaining how this all fits together, right? But he's not going to ever say that because he wants to act like Marx has no reason for this. Secondly, he's going right now, he's going, hey, forget about it. He's doing this. And for anyone who's not familiar, a very sophomore public speaking trick is to do this a lot with your fingers. It supposedly gets a crowd on your side.
He's just Italian, and right now you're doing anti-Italian discrimination, and simply I won't stand for it. No, I actually saw a TikTok today. This guy was like complaining about all the kids who claim that their mental health issues or psychological issues stem from trauma. He's like, not everything stems from trauma. Quit thinking everybody has trauma and everything's trauma. I'm like, well, maybe we just have a system that traumatizes everyone, and induces people with mental illness. Like Howard Waitskin was writing about that in the 70s or 80s in his book, The Second Sickness, which is from the perspective of healthcare, basically saying it's impossible to treat the population under capitalism because it induces them with so many stresses and traumas.
And we will have a socialist society, a perfect communism that transcends private property, is how he put it. He said,
no, he did not. He never said perfect society. Sorry.
You guys call it a utopia all the fucking time. Hang on. Hang on. One of the reasons I say that the four goals of the woke left are always and forever the same: gain as much power as possible, destabilize the system, attack capitalism, usher in their Marxist utopia. One of the reasons I explicitly use the term utopia, which let's just get a definition on utopia real quick. A utopia typically describes an imaginary community or society that possesses highly desirable or near perfect qualities for its members. It was coined by Sir Thomas More in the 1516 book Utopia. The reason that I use the word utopia explicitly is because these jackasses, and by these jackasses I don't mean them specifically, but I mean Marxists in general, explicitly use the word utopia. They explicitly use it in their presentations all the effing time. It is not made up. So yes, Noah, you guys are preaching that you may not be able to reach a perfect society, but a near perfect society. Yeah, you're goddamn right.
I just got to get utopian and scientific. Anytime people say Marxism is a utopia, we hit them in the head with that book and move on.
Private property as human self-estrangement. That's a quote from the Economic Philosophic Manuscripts of 1944.
It's like they knew what I was going to say.
So Marx was interested in controlling or understanding and controlling how man produces himself.
Another lie. Ding! He wasn't interested in controlling. What are
you talking about? He literally writes about it in the Communist Manifesto,
I'm sorry,
Noah.
Go ahead.
No, he wanted the workers to be in control of production in their own lives, which they're currently not under the dictatorial, authoritarian system of capitalism, to use one of the bourgeoisie's own words.
Exclusively in the 18th.
To be really clear, even though I literally have an anthology of Marx sitting on my desk right now, which is a gift from my bitch cunt sister-in-law that we don't like to talk about. She gave it to me because she thought I would like it. But anyway, it came in handy later. Even though I have a literal anthology of like Marxist writings right now on my desk, I probably have only read the Communist Manifesto. Because that's not how I operate. I operate by like watching what they're saying in their trainings and stuff like that. And even I know that Marx said that because in the fucking Communist Manifesto. God. I know I'm too old for Twitch. That's why I'm not on it. I have some level of self-awareness. Maybe not a lot of self-awareness, but I have some.
40s. Very deeply. How do we do this? And he looks at the economic conditions and he's
God damn
Sorry.
it!
He does not begin with how do we do this. He begins with this is happening.
Marx was an economist. But Marx was never an economist. He was a theologian.
The correct answer is
wanted to
29.
Anybody who knows anything about classical economics, you know, even if you're not a Marxist, they know that that is an idiotic thing to say, right? Marx answered so many of the questions that Adam Smith and David Ricardo and the bourgeois economists set out for themselves, to the point where, and I wrote about this in my article about neoclassical economics, they had to come up with a new economic science to justify capitalism and to justify the reign of the bourgeoisie, because classical economics had been so thoroughly refuted or brought to its logical conclusions in the places where Adam Smith and David Ricardo were actually doing scientific analysis. So Marx made huge economic advancements. And, you know, you don't even have to be a Marxist to recognize this. You just have to, you know, look at the field of economics historically. But of course, he's not going to do that.
I just want to real quick add, real quick, that this right here, what he's doing, this line on the screen is the weakness of all bourgeois thought. It reverts to them having to guess what was going on in Marx's brain. Look, he wanted to produce a religion for mankind. Tell me where Marx wrote that he wanted that. Tell me a friend of his that said that he told him that. Tell me you had a machine that read that in his brain. You cannot guess what Marx wanted. You can only extrapolate from what he said, what he did. You cannot just go to, you know, all these things happened. The world was changed because of the work Marx did and Marxists have done. All because Marx wanted to create a religion for mankind? What? That comes from nowhere but inside Lion Lindsay.
That comes from L. Ron Hubbard in the Church of Scientology that this guy mixed up with Marxism somehow. I think since it's taking us so long to get through this, we should just go to this part, the most replayed part of the video.
Why
and
can't
get
you
through
just
that,
let it
and
play?
then maybe do a part two later, so we don't end up taking
Well, they're
3
gonna do a
hours
part
on this,
2.
unless
I
you guys
mean, I
wanna do
guess
it all.
that's good at least.
I'll have to take a break to eat. Maybe it might be fun to do a part 1 now and then later tonight come back and finish it up.
Oh, if they're gonna
I'd
come
be
back
down.
later tonight. Oh, wait, are they live right now?
Religion for
Please let them be
mankind
live
that
right
would
now.
supersede
I'll
all of the
strike that
religions
shit.
of mankind and bring him back to his true social nature.
Please.
This is the true fact of Marx. And what the goal was, like I said, is to complete man. So what he said is, well, how are we building man currently? All of his economic analysis is about how are we building man at present
We'll
through
keep
what he
an eye
called
on that.
material determinism. And he said, well,
What? Stop.
what we have is a
Ding, another lie. What is material determinism?
Are you going to refute the theory of material determinism, Noah? That we all believe in material determinism. It's the, you know, the second most important theory behind inversion of praxis. As soon as I figure out what these mean.
That needs a clip.
Yeah, somebody clip that. Sorry, I cut off your analysis here.
I mean, analysis of what?
These guys are
Material
such nerds.
determinism?
They really are. They're such nerds.
Made up nonsense. It sounds jargony.
I think what he was trying to say is that for Marx, and this is true, material conditions determine social consciousness, and the sort of persons that we are is determined by the forms of life that we exist in, which are historically constituted and rooted in material relations of production. And I'm sorry, but it's not just it. Marx kind of I wouldn't say he discovers it. There's hints of it in other places. He elaborates it to the point of it being a discovery and opens up the field of history to fully scientific inquiry. But it's not just Marx anymore. Like bourgeois historiography can't do the things it did before anymore, or as in the same way that it did it before. You can't just look at history from the standpoint of major historical actors, because people are like, well, it doesn't really explain much to me. You can't just look at history from the standpoint of just ideas and the movement of ideas, because it really doesn't fully explain it. So the best, even bourgeois historians, are forced to look at how it is that the material basis of society plays a role in producing changes, both in ideas and creates organically certain leaders to prop up, and then all of that connected leads to new stages in history. So, what Marx wrote, just like bourgeois economists have accepted in a form that aligns with their interests, the idea that capitalism is prone to crisis every 8 to 10 years, bourgeois historians have accepted that if you really want to understand something and explain a historical phenomena, you have to get at the roots of material production. And Eddie has often cited Edward Baptiste's book, The Half Has Never Been Told, and there's a bunch of examples of that. I mean, Du Bois, before he became explicitly a Marxist, he was just a brilliant thinker who was organically realizing that if I really want to understand this historical period, I'm going to have to describe its material relations, the class antagonisms that existed, the developments of certain technological devices that changed things, and then how that's related to new ideas that arose, and how that all together, along with organic leaders that were propped up, led to certain specific changes. And he was doing that before he became explicitly a Marxist. And there's so many examples of that in the best of bourgeois historians, and not that Du Bois is a bourgeois historian, but so this idea that...
Let me interrupt real quick, Carlos, because I actually got to run out there for 2 seconds. Wait till you hear what he tries to say. Du Bois is the we call Du Bois the father of American Marxism. He basically says Du Bois is a source of critical race theory later on. I'm not lying.
I doubt
It's the
James
most
Lindsay says
absurd
that
thing.
Du Bois
All right, I'll be
is
right
the
back.
source of critical race theory.
A special form of private property in our society. Our society is organized around private property. And so all of our thoughts organize around private property. In other words, there's a special kind of property that the bourgeois elite class has access to, and then they organize society to exclude everybody else from access to that property through exploitation, through alienation, through estrangement, through oppression. And so what Karl Marx was proposing is that economics becomes a vehicle to separate society into a bourgeois class that has access to a special form of property. The people who have access wish to retain that, so they oppress people and keep other people out of that special form of property. They erect a system of classism to do that. It's enforced by an ideology called capitalism that believes that this is the right way to engage in the world. And what we have to do is awaken the underclass, the proletariat, to the real conditions and the fact that they are historical agents of change, and bring them to do a revolution and transform society so that we would have equity.
All right, stop again real quick.
He's confusing so much. Economics is a vehicle for the bourgeoisie to own private property. It's just jumbling a bunch of stuff together. The economic system that we have is what Marx analyzed, which is the capitalist mode of production, which is based on private property ownership hoarded by the bourgeoisie and protected legally by the bourgeoisie. And yes, they use their control of the cultural apparatuses to push bourgeois ideology. But the ideology
around
itself
private
isn't
property
called,
ownership.
Capitalism. It's almost like this theory that people espouse that we just made up capitalism.
They're just
that we invented
nitpicking.
capitalism one day, that it wasn't a...
They're nitpicking. Like, this is what socialists fucking do. They nitpick the shit out of everything because what socialists do not talk about is how their ideas are going to impact you in the real world. Socialists just want to live in academia where they say all sorts of academic things, and if you try to like actually explain this is actually what this means when you get into the real world, they'd be like, no, that is not the academic definition of what Marx says, and you got this one little thing wrong in the definition, and that is not correct because because you tried to explain it in the real world. We're not interested in the real world. We're just up in our little Ivy Tower debating Marx all the time. Yeah, it's like exactly. This is like the very definition of like actually like this is what this means. Like no, fuck you. Not everyone, and I say this actually having a PhD of some sort. There is a time and a place for academia, and there is a time and a place to be in the real world with like real effing people. And it seems as though the socialist can really not distinguish between those two different things. Vince says, I wonder if the cognitive dissonance of the gentleman watching Lindsay is simply rooted in his not being part of their tribe while giving away their tribe's secrets. Well, I think that might have something to do with it, Vince, I wonder why they won't let James Lindsay speak. I wonder why they're simply like stopping every 3 seconds to nitpick on something that does not actually get to the core of the argument that James Lindsay's even making. It almost seems like they don't want their audience to actually hear from James Lindsay. They just want to hear Noah, Carlos, and Eddie pontificating for 2 hours. I'm just saying.
System that evolved from previously existing class struggles. Sorry to interrupt.
I'm sorry, I almost interrupted you there, Eddie. I caught myself. That's almost exactly what I was thinking. Everything.
Thank you, Catherine, for the super sticker. It's the devil horn, which I do really appreciate.
And then put them into reality. He's baking his own if he actually thought about that assumption for a minute, very stupid assumption, into everything. But because he's just so ideologically driven, it doesn't even faze him. So people get this notion of doing X and then put, capitalism into being and create these economies to withhold property from other people. No, that's not what Marx says. These arise due to the relationships we enter into that are in contradiction with the way that we produce things, right? And this leads to new things. Private property doesn't arise for rich people to oppress other people. It arises naturally due to the continual relation between always advancing production and always advancing relations of production.
And he's got it very backwards there, because it presupposes the things that he's saying it produces. And private property relations as juridical established relations presupposes that form of production. And they both arise dialectically and reinforce each other, but he was kind of making it seem backwards there. But you know what this guy is? He's the embodiment of that saying, which is like they know enough to be dangerous. Like they know the key terms in sometimes in a whole host of different contradictory worldviews, and he just meshes it all together in ways that the person that is uninformed, and unfortunately that includes a big chunk of the American people who have been lied to and kept intentionally ignorant by the ruling class, because if not they'd be overthrown by them. So that when these people listen to it, they're like, oh my God, look at all these buzzwords and how he connects them. This guy's fucking brilliant. And that is him knowing enough, which is not anything at all, but knowing enough to be dangerous, and that enough that he knows is like the terms.
Is this true? Did he just like open up an encyclopedia website? And like all of the people who like him are just not like Like they're just so easily sort of swayed by an argument that they don't even bother checking. That's wild to me. It's
I
like
guarantee-
reading Wikipedia.
Right. Yeah, I guarantee you this guy just Googled Mao or socialism with Chinese characteristics and found that,
Are you,
you know,
shitting
Britannica
me?
article. That's funny.
I
Why go to the
strongly
source?
doubt
It's
James
just like that
Lindsay
tick
did that.
history guy who
I
quoted
s-
Carlos instead of he quoted Carlos quoting Marx rather than quoting Marx.
Oh, Tick History got a shout out. Now I really do have to check out Tick History. I strongly doubt that James Lindsay went to the Encyclopedia Britannica or to Wikipedia or to any of these things. James Lindsay has like, the amount of archives of this shit that James Lindsay has is ridiculous.
He thought it was Carlos Marx.
Whatever word you want, they have the same definition. Now let's say that we
Hang
step
on.
out.
We got a super chat from Jenny's getting inky with it. Thank you, Jenny. They are just going through the motions of pretending to listen to Lindsay so that they can pretend to elucidate. Ooh, elucidate. What a great word. What is wrong with what he's saying, all for the sake of money. Sounds like grifting to me. Well, sadly, it doesn't really seem that Midwestern Marx is actually making that much money on this stream because I think I'm kicking their ass in super chats by like a couple $100. Thanks to all you guys. I do appreciate it. Capitalism is the best. So I'm not sure they're meeting their goal there. Guys, we are watching Socialism Saturday. We do this every Saturday at 6 p.m. We're not usually watching the socialists respond to something. This is like a special edition Socialism Saturday. But as a reminder, I will be going live at 1:45 p.m. Eastern Time tomorrow for a special edition Trans Marxism Live Socialism Sunday. So make sure you are subscribed to the channel for that. Just double check to make sure you guys are subscribed to the channel. Please do turn on notifications as well. It is really the only way that you will be notified when I post new content on YouTube. We do Socialism Saturdays every Saturday at 6 p.m. And please mount that like button for me if you have not already.
We step back from this species, this economic species, Homo economicus, and we step back to the genus, and we look at this idea, a special form of property that segregates society into people who have the bourgeois.
Hey, stop real quick. I'm so
Oh,
sorry.
God!
Marx does not say that it is a special form of property that segregates society, but that since the notion of property itself came into being, and not the notion, the thing, that this separated society. That's a lot different. What he's talking about is like Marx thinks that capitalism coming into being was the beginning of this. But Marx, it goes to great lengths to explain that's not the case. That it's the relation, the history of all hitherto existing society is the relation, or the history of class struggles, right? Between master and slave and plebeian and lord, or whatever. I'm butchering that, but you know what I mean.
Who are in class conflict with an ideology that keeps this in place. And the underclass must awaken with consciousness to fight back and to seize the means of production of that form of deterministic property. And now we say, change out class, put in race, and watch, we get critical race theory falls out of the hat.
No, it doesn't.
Yes, it
That's not
does.
what...
Yes, it does.
Can I just say
Yes,
he's
it
making
does,
it seem as
motherfucker.
if it's still 1846.
They don't,
Or
Kyle.
let's
Thank
go
you.
1848 with the manifesto, because the German ideology wasn't published. It's still
Noah, you yelling "no, it doesn't" actually mean that what he said was untrue. I hope you understand that.
1848, and Marx and Engels are saying this, and they're backing it up with some evidence, but it's not scientifically conclusive yet. I mean, it's complete bullshit, and I'm referring here to the point that he was making before. It's proven through economic anthropology and through studies that have been done, scientific studies, into how it is that class societies have developed out of primitive or primary communities. It's been proven that the Marxist thesis from the 1840s, from the mid 1840s, are true. Like No one rejects that. That's all been scientifically proven. And so he's like, the areas where he thinks he's going against Marxism are the areas where this bourgeois specialists themselves in various areas have had to admit that Marx was right. And this specifically is not just the Marxian thesis. You already have it in Rousseau, where the idea is that private property ends up developing all these sorts of contradictions, but it is itself shaped by certain developments that we make in our ability to produce, that are a product of having to react to difficulties that we encounter in our environment, that forces ingenuity. Ingenuity eventually leads to us producing more than we need, and that ends up leading at some point, he describes it in a very contingent fashion, but at some contingent point, someone says, this is mine, and boom, property starts. But so it's like he's making it seem like these points that are essential to Marxism aren't already confirmed by the bourgeois sciences themselves ever since Henry Louis Morgan.
Right, and as Noah said, critical race theory isn't Marxism, but there are a lot of liberal and bourgeois ideologues nowadays who try to take away class, an obscure class, and say the primary contradiction is race. All we need is racial struggle. They're basically calling for like racial warfare, but that is one of the things they try and do, obscure class and put race in there. But it's not you shake Marxism and that falls out of the hat. Once you stop seeing class as the primary contradiction in society, it's no longer Marxism, right? Now you've gone into liberalism, you've gone into something else. So to say that, you have Marxism and then it just leads to replacing this view of class with the view of race. No, that's antagonistic to Marxism. In Marx's day, there were still people writing about scientific racism and shit. They were trying to say that, colonialism was just the way of the world because the black people and brown people in the global South weren't as smart and as good as the white people in the West. And Marx was saying, no, of course not. The history of all hitherto existing societies is the history of class struggle, not racial struggle. There are material factors that allowed Europe to become the dominant colonial power. It's not because of the color of their skin.
Akshay.
So yeah, to say that you can just replace class with race and it's still basically Marxism is totally absurd.
Wild. And I just want to say this one more time. Like, CRT, critical race theory, is a bourgeois theory that attempts to address a real problem.
Critical race theory
Marxism
is
has already addressed this in an actual deep manner, where basically these struggles of racialized people are very literally a class struggle. It is a struggle of working people.
Wait. Noah, are you saying that the race struggle is basically just replacing the class struggle that is Marxism? Are you saying, Noah, that critical race theory, which says there is a struggle between races, is basically just like, inserting race where class was in Marxism? It kind of sounds like critical race theory is Marxism to me, just with class and race swapped.
A ruling class. And the way that looks, its characteristics are determined by the history that goes into it. The struggle against chattel slavery, right, was a revolution of these people against a ruling class. Not against
so you're really just hammering home there, Noah, that the story of race in the United States, according to you, is a class-based struggle. Kind of seems like critical race theory to me is Marxist.
The racist white working class, right? But against that ruling class.
Right, and just to address this real quick from Chris, is race a material relation like class? I would say that both yes and no. Engels says in a letter, I believe it was to Conrad Schmidt.
They're like, no, when it's not convenient,
I might be wrong,
really,
but it's an 1890s letter within the collection of
but
letters
no,
on
when it's
historical
not
materialism.
convenient.
He says that race is a factor within the economic base. And that was true in the U.S. at its time, because he's dealing with 1890s U.S. So you have lynching going on, institutionalized racism, Jim Crow, red lines, and just a literal underclass of people. But that kind of changes after the Third American Revolution with the Civil Rights Movement, such that race has become less and less and less a material factor within the economic base. Yeah.
1993, Cheryl Harris wrote a long article for the Harvard Law Review called Whiteness is Property. She explained that whiteness, or white privilege, constitutes a kind of cultural private property. She says it must be abolished in order to have racial justice. Just like Karl.
I didn't even know that. I had no idea that article actually existed, because I picked up on the fact that whiteness is property by watching these people's trainings and and seeing them actually use it as like the term for private property over and over and over and over and over again. But that's really interesting. I really had no idea about that because I don't read the academic literature. I just watch their trainings. But there's a paper that says whiteness is property. God damn. It's kind of like I said every single time I said whiteness is about who owns the power structure, who is bourgeois, who has private property. James Lindsay already had academic backing for that. But that is actually really important. If you're new to Socialism Saturday, guys, it is actually really, really, really important that you understand that whiteness is not about skin color. It's not about being like a pasty white Irish girl like me. It is about private property, which is code word for capitalism for these people. It's really critical that people understand this. Critical race theory does not hate white people. Critical race theory hates people who own private property. If you are a white person, as the panel for Midwestern Marx is demonstrating right now, but you are a Marxist, critical race theory loves you. Even if you're a white man and you're a Marxist, critical race theory loves you. You are one of the chosen, one of the blessed. But if you endorse capitalism or private property ownership, then critical race theory will hate you. It is not about your skin color. Anyone who's telling you that critical race theory wants to abolish white people or that there's going to be a white genocide at any moment is lying to you. Those are not good people. Do not align with those people. Not good. It is all about capitalism. It is an attack on capitalism from start to finish.
Marx said that in the Communist Manifesto, he wrote, communism can be summarized in a single sentence, the abolition of private property.
All right, stop real quick. He's assuming his own mistakes into what Marx says again. When Marx says this, he's saying that communism is this process, right? It is society coming out of private property, all of this property developing and developing and developing to a point where private property becomes something else because there's nowhere left for it to go. It has developed to its absolute fullest and something higher comes out of that. That is a theory of the communists. That's what he says.
Hang on, we got a super chat coming in from Kyle. Thank you, Kyle. I dated a socialist during George Floyd. I'm sorry. And didn't understand what she meant by whiteness. Then watching James and you, I understand now. Well, I'm glad you came to that understanding. Never date a socialist again. That was a horrible idea, but now you've learned a lesson, I hope. That's like, bro, I'm really sorry. Fun fact, do you guys know that the socialists call the summer of love that was 2020? Did you guys know they call that the George Floyd Rebellion? There are literally books written called the George Floyd Rebellion. It's crazy. Anyway, thank you, Kyle. Yeah, Autumn says, I bet she was freaky in the bedroom. Well, I mean, I suppose dating a socialist has to have some upside, Autumn.
Not the theory of the communists is we hate private property and we're going to get rid of it, which is what he's trying to say that means. Not the same thing.
Yes, and we've hit our stopping point here. I think unless you guys want to keep going, we can be done with this guy and return to him later for a part 2.
What the
It took us an
hell?
hour and 20 minutes
'Cause
to
you
get
wouldn't
8
shut
minutes
the
and 30
fuck up.
seconds in. Mostly because
Have they
Noah
started a
and
part 2
Carlos
yet?
can't
Have
shut
they?
the fuck up.
They have not
But
started a
also
part 2 yet.
because of how many lies were in this guy had packed into just a 30-minute speech. So blatant lies to the point where you gotta wonder if he knows. If he knows that he's lying and he's just trying to spew propaganda. You said he's pretty high up, right, Noah, in some kind of bourgeois organization. So it's probably the case
James
that he
Lindsay
knows
is
his
high
only
up in a
job is
bourgeois
to obscure what
organization.
Marxism actually
I'm sure that would be
is.
news to James Lindsay.
Even if he doesn't know exactly what he's doing,
Oh
I think he
my
does know what he's doing in a way.
He has to know he hasn't actually studied Marxism. He has to know that. And therefore, he is lying no matter which
Bro,
way it comes out.
Wait till they find
And,
his 4-hour podcast
basically,
on
he's like-
Marcuse.
For some reason, people think he's some great thinker and has
'Cause he
debunked
is.
Marxism. Like that Tick History guy was basically just regurgitating a crappier version of the showmanship that he has, right? All he does is dress up his incorrect and really ridiculous statements with fancy sounding words and a few quotes here and there that he pulled out of Marx and takes out of context and then makes up, things like the inversion of praxis.
By the way, I just want to say here, a friend is correct. This is a very important book for understanding what it is that we mean when race or women's struggles or national struggles are taken as forms of class struggle.
Never far from me. This book, amazing book.
I think that there's a tweet that we put out a few days ago about pessimism and the paradox of pessimism.
You learned yourself
which is
a lesson,
that
Kyle. It's all good. Life
these
is about
radical
experience.
forms
I'm
of
glad you made it.
pessimism, what Kari Shukrov calls the radicalization of the impossibility of exit, there's so much. They're so promoted by bourgeois, the bourgeois political economy of knowledge, and
Hang on. Renan wants to know, by the way, have you seen the interview between Piers Morgan and Roseanne? I have not, but I did see Michael Malice tweet a picture earlier today of Roseanne dressed up like Hitler serving cookies, which I actually thought was pretty great, to be honest. Like that was some funny shit. But I have not watched the Piers Morgan interview, Renan. Thank you for the super chat. They're still going on for another 24 fucking minutes. Like, why did they stop watching James Lindsay? This stream still goes on for another 24 minutes. We're going to watch it. Carlin, Marxism is retelling of dualism, Machian Gnostic religion resold. I'm not sold on that Gnostic thing, Noah. Just so you know, that's a point that I disagree with James Lindsay on. I understand why he argues it, but I just disagree with him on it. Whatever. Resold with new capitalism is evil. It's a cryptic religion, utopia, and all. I do appreciate the super chat, Noah, even if I disagree on the Gnostic stuff. Seriously, Carlin, I think these guys show why you're that pearl of rare value in this space, because you will go through the full stream no matter what madness gets said. Well, that's what we do here, Vince. Thank you. We suffer for everyone's benefit because they might say something crazy that we can use against them. And I originally started out Socialism Saturday because I was like, if we just watch enough socialism, eventually one of them is going to confess how they rigged the 2020 election, which obviously wasn't rigged and was obviously the most perfect election of all time. But maybe if we just watch enough socialism, eventually they'll confess it. Anyway, we're still going to listen to the rest of the 24 minutes remaining in this stream, even if they don't want to watch James Lindsay.
The bourgeoisie benefits so deeply from our pessimism, and in the same way that should let us know that shit, if they think we can do something, and that is implied in the fact that they're spending so much in developing these ideologues to make us think that we can't do anything, that hints to us that, yeah, we are powerful and we can change the existing state of affairs because our enemies, if anything, really believe so, and they spend so many resources doing it. It's the same thing with like these distortions of Marxism. If Marxism was false, if Marxism didn't work, they wouldn't spend so many resources propping up a fake radicalism and then having puppets like James Lindsay just feed into that and prop each opposite side of the bourgeois ideology up in order to always leave Marxism, real Marxism, outside of the conversation. It's the same argument would make with respect to socialist countries. Socialism doesn't work. Why you have to blockade it? You know, if Cuba doesn't work, just let it be. Why put a blockade and ensure that any
I actually don't think there should be a blockade on Cuba, to be honest. Like, I want to go to fucking Cuba. I think the blockade is stupid. So I will actually agree with Carlos on that. I don't think we should be blockading Cuba.
small adjustment that they make to work around it, you then readjust the blockade so that so if these things are failures or untrue, let them be so by their own weight. Why force them down and then somehow they still keep popping up and predicting things or succeeding or whatever the case might be? And that should help us understand that it is a powerful worldview. It is a worldview that can help us change the world and that we can change the world. And even when we feel like the horizon is very bleak and obscure and we don't know how to move forward, we should have that sort of comfort that if anything, the ruling class, our enemy, knows that we can do it. So we should too.
Really, really well said, brother. I guess I'll just end it here by saying that if James Lindsay ever wants to be an actual man and defend the things he says, he knows where to find me or any of us. And here's the thing that really bothers me about these types. They always talk about being tough and blah, 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 right? But they hide behind ignoring the truth. Always. They cannot have a conversation, a simple, honest conversation with one of the three of us ever. Because when they do that, all those lies will be exposed. The gravy train ends. And I was thinking about this before this, right? I'm a family man. I really, like, everything I learned about being a man is from Pops, my dad, right? And I put a lot of stock into sort of having built myself into the sort of person that my son can look at and go, I'm proud of him. I want to be like that when I grow up, right? How do these people who know they are lying and taking a bunch of money for lies ever able to look their children in the eye? I could never do that if that were me. If I knew I was taking money to lie to people to make society worse. You are taking money to lie to people. Even if I didn't know for a fact it would make society worse, if I sort of just believed it would be better, if I didn't know it, I could never look my kids in the eye. Ever, ever, ever. And so, like, the notion that they have some family values or that they're tough when they can't confront the truth and can't even be honest with their children, I'm sorry. It just don't add up.
It's like, I don't know if you watch my coverage of the Steven Crowder thing, but it's like that. He's preaching, everyone should be socially conservative and traditional and, be a family man, and that should be enforced by the government. And then behind the scenes, he's abusing his wife. It's like, if you believe in these conservative traditional values, why don't you live by them, jackass? But I think these people know what they are. They know that they're liars and propagandists for money. And I mean, people don't like, I've talked about this a lot. I've even felt the pull, to sell out. I've never even considered doing it, but like, I was offered a job with the Biden campaign and, some sort of government agency job. And even when our TikToks were getting banned, I was like, well, maybe I should drift more towards liberalism so we can keep our TikTok.
I want to see receipts on that, Eddie. I don't
decided
believe you.
not to, but that pull is always there, right? that you could sell out at any moment, start repeating bourgeois bullshit, and the money's going to start flowing
Now,
in. So these people.
What I will say is this, and I don't think James Lindsay is sold out at all. I think that James Lindsay has very generous benefactors that want him to say whatever he wants to say, and he's very blessed for that. But what I will say is this, is where Eddie is correct, is there is tremendous pressure when you are creating content online to sell out and to say exactly what these people want you to say. And you are made well aware of what they want you to say and how much money you will make if you say the things that they want you to say. It is super tempting. And it's not fucking worth it, at least for me. But there are a lot of people who believe it is worth it, and there are a lot of people who just want to be famous on the internet. And if you take the money and you take the talking points and you say the things that they want you to say, they will make you famous on the internet. And for some people, that is simply more important than being honest and telling the truth. So Eddie is correct about that in general. However, I do not believe that that James Lindsay has done that. I think he's doing exactly what he wants to do, and God bless him for it. We are all better off because James Lindsay is doing what he's doing.
Who have allowed the money to flow in. I think they know that they've sold their soul to the devil in a lot of cases. I don't know if Jesse Lee Peterson knows, but other people.
Jesse Lee Peterson is
We should have
absolutely
him
sold
on
out.
for a
I will
debate.
say that. He
I
absolutely
would love
has.
to talk to him.
I would too.
Beta.
The Uncle Ruckus guy.
What was that, Carlos?
Is that like the real life Uncle Ruckus dude that I've seen just say a bunch of racist shit?
Is he?
Yes.
He's a black guy. I don't know. His catchphrase, he just goes, Beta. It's very good.
It's funny because of how stupid it is, but I think that there's a point that could be made here, and it was one that was already made by Marx. There's a part of the manifesto where they're getting accused for wanting to abolish family relations, and the reality is that that's
true.
Like capitalism already abolishes all of that. Capitalism is in terms
really?
of any
How
sort
do you
of
fucking
bond
figure?
that is not mediated by the needs of capital. It abolishes them.
Carlos is literally making the argument that capitalism abolishes the family in the same way that socialism and communism wants to abolish the family. Are you fucking shitting me, Carlos? Because the basis of the abolish the family argument is that children are considered private property of their parents, and socialists want to do away with private property. Therefore, children become property of the community. That is literally the argument that is fucking made in the fucking Communist Manifesto. Under capitalism, children are still private property of their parents until they reach the age of majority. Wow. See, this is why we listen to the whole thing, guys, even when they're not listening to James Lindsay anymore. This is why we listen to the whole thing.
And so it's always been a force that's been like anti-family. And if you relate your whatever the hell notion
not
of
in the way
conservatism
that
you have
socialism
to, like,
is
the flourishing of families or something, capitalism is the system that is the most antagonistic to that. Because it's fundamentally a dehumanizing system, and families are human forms of coming together, which don't have to be limited to like the nuclear family. Historically, have been a lot more communal, but even with an idea of the nuclear family, the notion that capitalism is somehow a conservative force in that field is completely absurd. It's always been a force of dissolving families, and we've seen this with neoliberalism. Like the rates of divorces, do you know how impossible it is to keep up a family in the US if you're a young person, to think about having a kid? I'm called crazy all the time because I decided to have
at all.
a kid, not because people are anti-children, but because they can't have this wonderful experience of parenting because of how difficult it is to survive in our society. And I'm feeling those difficulties in my everyday life. Like the prices for formula are going up, and the prices for baby food and diapers and our food and our bills and everything is going up. And it's impossible. If you actually care about family values, you have to be a staunch anti-capitalist, right? The only society that can prioritize family values or families in a genuine sense, and I don't mean...
Okay, I just want to take this opportunity to remind everyone that socialists always lie. Even when they're nice, even when they pretend they're your friend, they will always lie to you. Always and forever. Never never let your guard down for one fucking second when you're watching socialism or talking to a socialist, because they will always lie to you, which is exactly what Carlos is doing right now. He has a completely straight face. He might even believe that he is telling the truth, but they will always lie to you and gaslight you to try to make you think that what is up is down and down is up, and socialism is the only answer to the problem. And it is not true. Recognizing when you're being gaslit, when it's just being said in like a really calm way, like, it's not socialists who want to abolish the family, even though the Communist Manifesto talks about that. No, 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 no. It's not socialist. It's really capitalism. Capitalism makes it impossible to raise a family. And wouldn't it be better if we were in a land, a utopia, some might say, in which you are given everything that you needed to raise a family, and it's the socialists that really want you to have a family. They are fucking lying. And people have really got to start recognizing when they're being gaslit, even when someone is saying things in like a very nice way, because oftentimes a lot of people will think that like if you say something with a mean tone, that means you're gaslighting. No, 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 no. The most effective gaslighting comes when someone is speaking very calmly and just level-headedly, and just like they're just trying to be your friend, they're just trying to help you out. But you have got to recognize when the gaslighting is taking place. And right now, Carlos is trying to gaslight all of us to really believe that the Communist Manifesto doesn't call for the abolishment of the family, because the family is a form of private property, and under the Communist Manifesto and everything that Marx and Engels taught, we are going to abolish all private property, which will include your children, who will become property of the state.
Mean this in a form that's limited to the traditional notions of family, but it's only socialism that does that because it prioritizes human beings in general. So that's why I'm seeing like, and not to say that Tucker's an archetype of this transition of I care about families and therefore I'm anti-capitalist, not at all. But like some of the most viral statements that he's been making, the one that we reacted to last time, you and I, Eddie, of him saying, yeah, it's gonna affect 10 million families if we allow AI to just come in and displace people from their jobs. If your analysis is centered on how can families flourish as a form of a human unit, you have to be anti-capitalist. They can only flourish under a society where they're comfortable to even, there's the comfort provided so they can even exist.
Carlos won't come on my channel right here, by the way. I call him on his bullshit in about 3.5 seconds.
Doesn't have to be enslaved in that, where there's childcare, universal childcare, and you look, and it's only socialist society
that might be, Dave,
have been able to accomplish this and free the family and allow the families to flourish. And
and not only that, that was a thing about AI, and he said he would hold AI back and self-driving cars because it will put all those families out of work.
Couple hundred.
If we have a socialist society and we're producing things for need rather than the profits of a couple of assholes at the top, we can let those self-driving cars go wild and develop to their utmost, and then we don't have to drive anymore, right? Those people who are driving 12-hour days don't have to do that anymore, or don't have to work as much, right? They can operate whatever AI instead. We can develop in a way that just makes our lives easier rather than makes more money for like I said, the assholes at the top.
Absolutely. And I mean, that's what we discussed on Tucker, those points specifically in our last stream. Yeah. So do you guys want to watch Jesse Lee Peterson's greatest moments next, or what? You got anything else for us today, Noah?
I'm down to do part 2 because the end of this gets pretty good.
When are you going to do a part 2? Let us know. We'll snipe that stream.
Dinner with the wife, since again a family man.
Right, you're putting your money where your mouth is now.
What was that?
You're putting your money where your mouth is now. Except Noah's about to go to McDonald's and eat by himself. It's all a lie.
Actually, before we started this, she went and picked up a rotisserie chicken which we only recently got into.
Fucking rotisserie
So we're
chicken is
doing
delicious.
like that and some rice and naan bread.
Rotisserie chicken, another product of capitalism. Can we all be honest? Rotisserie chicken is delicious. Everyone loves a good rotisserie chicken from the supermarket. Come on.
Dude, it's so good. So good.
If you're poor out there and you want to get your protein and eat healthy, rotisserie chicken, man. I'll get one and just eat the whole thing in a night. They're so good.
So good. And it's like sometimes when like you're in the supermarket and you walk by it, you're like, oh, I gotta go there. You know, like there's no way not to get that chicken after you smell it.
That's one of the weirdest, like, and I have never, it's one of those things that like racism is so deeply irrational, like the stereotype that only like black people like chicken.
Who fucking said only black people like chicken?
Everyone.
Carlos, that was like incredibly racist. Who the fuck said only black people like chicken? White people have been eating rotisserie chicken forever. God. American legend, you're obviously a terrorist if you don't like a rotisserie chicken from the Are you serious? How can you not like rotisserie chicken from the supermarket? American legend, I just don't know if I can look at you the same way ever again.
Everyone loves fucking chicken. I can't go into Walmart without like being the meme of like the chicken drawing me, and I'm just going towards it. It's so stupid, and like
no
all of
one
these
said
ideologies
only
are
black
so
people
deeply
like
irrational.
chicken.
And if I had a critique of Lukács's theory of irrationalism, is that he sees it starting off in 1848.
Exactly, fish addict. Exactly. In capitalist supermarkets, you can buy a rotisserie chicken. In communist countries, you stand in line for fucking toilet paper. Exactly.
The bourgeois forces becoming officially counter-revolutionary. But in reality, like the history of at least the most racialized forms that capitalism has had to take in order to divide workers, it's so deeply irrational. There's few things that make less sense than racism. And racial stereotypes, they couldn't be any
just
stupider.
made a racial stereotype.
And the chicken is a perfect example.
No one said only black people like rotisserie chicken. That's
everybody
you,
loves
Carlos.
I grew up in a black neighborhood, as you know.
Oh, Noah had black
and when I
friends,
would
so
go
this
to
is
like
great. Noah's just
holiday
the
events,
liberal
like
white lady.
black
I have
parties,
black friends.
barbecues, birthday parties, whatever. If there was a cookout, like these kind of jokes were always just what we did, right? So like a friend would like bring up.
This is proof. I'm so glad we watched this section of the stream because this is absolute fucking proof that white male socialists are more racist than liberal white women. I never thought I'd see the day. I thought that we had peaked with racism with liberal white women, but no, the white male socialist, again, has to usurp the liberal white women by being more fucking racist.
Plate over to the table, and like his would have like chicken, piled high on it, but there'd be no chicken on mine. Right? Like he's like, oh, I didn't get you. You can't have that. That's a black thing, dude.
What the fuck are you talking about?
So funny.
It's so true though. It's such. I mean, that was what I thought the first time I read imperialism. Because I guess if you look at the state of the world and the way that the bourgeois media portrays the global South, it is like, why is all the wealth concentrated in the white nations? But then you learn about colonialism and imperialism. You're like, oh, the material factors. Yeah, these were just, Europe was the first place to industrialize, really, and capitalism developed there first. So they were able to export capital abroad and super exploit foreign countries. But I think that's just my theory for why a lot of like young Americans still fall into racist white supremacist ideologies. They look at the world.
You're the one advancing racist ideologies.
Or this divide, this wealth gap, until you start to study, like, I don't know, Walter Rodney's How Europe Underdeveloped Africa or something like that. And then it starts to make sense. But that's also why I say Marxism is the ultimate debunk for racism, or, IQ science or whatever. Like, once you understand that things have material bases, nothing could appear more stupid than the ideology that things happen because certain races are superior to others, or certain races have certain characteristics. Like, just there's
That's
no
not even what
evidence for it. It's
racism
so
means
fucking
most of the
irrational.
time.
There used to be a saying back in the day that anti-Semitism was socialism for stupid people.
Oh,
And
There's
I've
like a
already done this
conclusion
in
that
my
leads you
head
to
philosophically. It's going to
socialism.
happen. Don't
If
worry
you're
about it.
stupid, you go to racism or anti-Semitism, whatever, you know.
And the dangerous part is that a lot of these things are coming back in culturalist or woke form.
Listen, American Legend, you need to try some more rotisserie chicken from the supermarket. And you can take the skin off if you want. You don't have to eat the skin. I would recommend, like, maybe not going in for the breastises, maybe trying a leg or a thigh. Because, like, I always go for the leg myself, and the leg is, like, the best part, I think. But you just need to try some more, like, rotisserie chicken from the supermarket is, like, basically one of the best things that you can possibly eat. It's so fucking good. You just dig right into it with, like, a fork or something. You can take the skin off. You don't have to eat it. You can feed it to an animal of something. Like, trust me, my dog's reaction when I have rotisserie chicken from the supermarket will tell you all you need to know. Because they lose their fucking... They're like, there's a rotisserie chicken from the supermarket? We have won the fucking lottery! Anyway.
Forms, and the fad in the academy is to talk about reason as something that belongs to Europe. Excuse me? You know, you read some of these post-colonial theorists and the way they speak about reason, it's like, what is implied here if not the fact that Europe is rational, the rest of the world is not, except that the way that it's being done is in a way that's like, yeah, but European reason it's bad, the rest of the world's reason is good. So that doesn't take away the deeply racist thing you just fucking implied, which is that non-Europeans are irrational.
Mm-hmm.
Or have a fundamentally different form of reason. I mean, what the fuck are you talking about? And that's one of those things where, like, critique of liberalism today and the forms that it's taken, or wokeism, if you don't do it, not only are you like missing half of bourgeois ideology and making your war of positions a one-legged, one-armed war of positions, and you're not going to be able to really win, but you're opening the door for the return of the most deeply reactionary philosophical assumptions, the same philosophical assumptions that perpetuated race science and all other forms of racist ideologies, except under a woke version. And that is scary, because that can any moment turn into the opposite and stop being woke and be more explicitly reactionary. And we're seeing hints of it here and there. But
right, and it seems like the right goes more towards racism than to counteract that, right?
Mm-hmm.
They just see the enemy as wokeism, and they're like, well, the truth must be racism then.
Well, it's like the only...
Sorry, one more thing too. Like, Carlos and I saw a girl the other day. Carlos sent it to me. She was on a podcast, and she was like, I just had this red pill moment the other day where I realized, like, why would I ever argue with my boyfriend? Men are always right. Men are better at raising children. Men are better at cooking. Men are better at everything.
I fucking hate this fucking, like, manosphere bullshit that is basically co-opting, like, the whole, like, red pill thing. Red pill is waking up to the reality of the world as it really is. Red pill is not about becoming a Republican. It's not about becoming a conservative. It's certainly not about becoming a fucking manosphere tradcon. Like, if you want to be a tradcon wife, like, more power to you. If that's your choice, that's fine. But that's not what fucking red pill is. They are co-opting the whole red pill thing in the same way that the queer Marxists are co-opting the gay rights thing. And it's bullshit. Like, this fucking manosphere bullshit is going to ruin everything. You guys need to recommend some manosphere stuff for me to watch, because I will rip that shit up. I really will. And I'll have a great time doing it. And then they'll start, Carlin was always a leftist. And it'll be great. Okay. And then we will sell them the all tears are tasty tumbler, because they're clearly having very many tears about the fact that a woman said that something that I don't like. Yeah, I was thinking about watching that bitch. she might be a little too young for me, if I'm honest. Like, it's like, I don't know. It's like a 20-something saying stupid 20-something things to make money on the internet. Like, where have I heard that story before?
Everything. I'm like, ah! So because these kids are being indoctrinated with liberalism and wokeism, they think, oh, I got to take the red pill and go the opposite direction. You know, that's the truth they're trying to hide from me, till they end up in these insane, sexist, self-deprecating positions.
If you're looking for the real red pill, it's inside Marx's Capital. Open that up, you'll find it, I promise.
No, wrong.
But like,
Wrong.
here's the thing: between the
Wrong.
smart white supremacists like Richard Spencer, who know how to talk and try to package what they say, and a lot of the woke liberals, every single assumption is the same. The only difference is that Spencer says, well, you know, all of these things are correct. My opinion on the conclusion is just different. He says, you know, he likes the white race and the woke say they don't, or whatever it is. But the fundamental assumptions that people are inherently different and incompatible and cannot live together, cannot think the same, do not approach it, nothing is similar. Those are the same. That is like literally, that's like Heidegger's whole thing on how people develop, right? And what his version of being is connected to a certain people and land, etc. And if you come from outside that land, you're an enemy to them.
I mean, I don't know what more OG version of identity politics than the white nationalist. That's identity politics, except like you said, the identity that's fetishized and reified and projected into its own thing, divorced from any social relations upon which it is dependent, is the white identity, which is weird because whiteness has had to include more and more like groups that weren't historically white, the Irish, the Italian.
Whiteness has had to include more groups that were not historically white. How could that be? How could that possibly be if whiteness was just about skin color? How is it possible that whiteness can include groups who were not historically white if it's just about skin color, Carlos?
Italians, Jewish people, and it shows the flexibility of these
Carlos
categories.
considers the Jews to
the
be
fact
white.
that
That seems to be a little
their core,
anti-Semitic
what
to
they end
me.
up playing is just a very fundamental role for dividing.
Carlos literally just called the Jews white. Does anyone else think that might be a little anti-Semitic to call the Jews white or assimilating to whiteness?
Working people under capitalism, and that's why there's this really good phrase that I always bring up from Carlos Martinez, which is that I believe it's him quoting Malcolm X, but it's something along the lines of capitalism cannot function without racism. And I think here we can go beyond just racism and speak about these more woke forms of dividing the people that have these racist assumptions underpinning them. And socialism cannot function with those things. Socialism seeks to overcome all of those things and remove these artificial divisions that capitalist ideology brings into the people in order to divide and conquer. If we're divided and fighting over the things, our accidental properties and not our substantial sameness, the capitalists are going to, steamroll right through us. But if we're united and we realize that objectively our conditions are similar and that we have the same interests and that the difference that we have, whether it's racial or sexual or whatever it might be, it doesn't it's not of a more substantial character than the similarities we have as working and poor people and exploited and oppressed people. Until we're able to do that, we're not able to unite. And whether it's through explicit racist false consciousness or woke forms of false consciousness, it all serves to divide the people. And at this moment in history, a central question that we should ask, whether it's someone we're listening to or an ideological worldview that we're reading about, whatever it is, a central question we should ask is this helping to unite the people against capitalism and imperialism? Or is it dividing them? Is it fragmentating the working class? And both in the same way that the racists used to fragmentate the working class, today a lot of the wokes are too.
That's a really, really great place to end it, brother.
Excellent. What are you doing in part
This
two?
is a great stream.
What are you doing the rest of it?
We will see y'all again for part 2
When?
of taking down Lion Lindsay or Lion
not on
James
their channel
Lindsay
right
in
now.
the future.
All right.
But
Well,
for
we'll have to
now,
look for it,
thank
I
you
guess.
everybody for watching and for all of your great comments and questions. Thank you to the people that gave super chats, etc. One more time, we get throttled for real. Please hit like, subscribe, etc. Go to Midwestern or patreon.com/MidwesternMarx if you want to help us out. We also have a buy me a coffee now.
All right. We don't need to listen to them shilling. I guess that's all we have for the Socialism Saturday. And what a shame. What a shame that the good socialist over at Midwestern Marx, who will not accept an invitation to come on my channel and talk to the people and the workers as they claim to want to do, but they won't even let James Lindsay talk enough to be able to actually explain his points. I was actually really looking forward to actually hearing that speech from James Lindsay because I still haven't heard it. I have them pontificating about what they think James Lindsay said, but in typical socialist fashion, it was a lot of lying and deflection and ridiculous behavior. But we expect nothing less from our friends over at Midwestern Marx, and we'll keep an eye on when they do that part 2 of that stream. But I think we did have an enjoyable time overall. Now, guys, as a reminder, tomorrow we are having a Sunday special stream because I normally don't stream on Sunday, except that our good friends over at Haymarket Books, and by good friends, I mean sometimes we snipe their streams and there's nothing really they can do about it. Our good friends over at Haymarket Books tomorrow at 2 p.m. are doing a live presentation all about one of our favorite subjects, which is transgender Marxism. And they're talking about the backlash to the trans people and how the transgender Marxists can save us all. And we are going to start the stream at about 1:45 tomorrow. And you can all come and join us, and then we'll watch live. And if you guys want to go into their chat and talk, I'm not gonna tell you what to do. I'm an anarchist. I don't believe in telling people what to do. But if you want to go into their chat and talk, I would recommend be polite, ask good questions. We'll talk about that. I don't want to see anyone going into their chat tomorrow and be like, why are you engaging in capitalism if you're a socialist? Because there is a reason that they do that, and I have videos on this channel explaining that. So we don't ask low-level fucking questions on this channel. If you're going to go into the socialist chat and talk to the socialists, which I would encourage everyone to do as long as you have good questions, then we're going to ask high-level intellectual questions to like throw them. We watched enough queer Marxism and transgender Marxism to know what the deal is. We're going to come up with some great questions. I'm going to go live at 1:45 p.m. tomorrow for that, and it's going to be great. All right, guys, that's all we have for right now. Take care, and we'll see you soon. Bye!